Hey, what's going on? Welcome to the Jess Marshall Podcast. This week I've got on the Migraine Doc, Brandon Brown with the Specific Chiropractic out of Richardson, Texas. He is a migraine expert. We're going to talk about a bunch of stuff, though. And if you do struggle with migraines, make sure hang through the podcast until the end. He's got very specific, unique techniques that help him help people like you. Hope you enjoy the podcast. Talk to you after. Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Jess Marshall Podcast. Wow. Mark that swipe. Bring it. Dan Quinn is a G, man. And I'm a Seahawks guy.
I think he should be our head coach.
Really?
I think he should.
Everyone
the
says
game
that
last year when McCarthy was out and he was because
Quinn
of
had
COVID.
His hat on
Quinn
backwards.
Had his hat on backwards.
Yeah.
Those guys were celebrating with him.
Yeah.
They were having fun. Like I know everyone's like, no, you got to be the Belichick. Everyone's afraid of you and everyone fears you. And I'm like, that's that dude's style. That's how it works. But that's also
He's
starting to see is
gone,
outdated.
bro.
Look what McVay does with the Rams.
Sure.
Everyone loves that dude. If the Cowboys were like, we somehow convinced McVay to come to I'd be like, I'm in. That's when Tom Brady was like working around. Everybody's like, well, what if the Cowboys said, hey, we're letting Dak go. We got Tom Brady. I go, I lose my shit. Yeah. We now have Tom Brady. Are you kidding me?
No doubt.
They're like, well, what about Aaron Rodgers? He's always like this. I'm like, you still aren't going to tell me that you're going to take that shot?
Let's
that
go.
Opportunity? Like,
we got ayahuasca on the sidelines. Bring Aaron Rodgers, man. Let's go.
It doesn't matter. Like, whoever's going to help get the job done, that's who we need.
No doubt.
I'm not a Dak hater for sure. I probably ride with him more than anyone else, like, especially with the whole Cooper Rush thing. Everybody's sort of jumping ship, and they're like,
Jerry's leading the whole charge on that shit, man.
Well, he's the you want to talk about a guy. He's the smart guy when it comes to
marketing,
just the marketing and the awareness. Like, if we can create the marketing and awareness of this, and so of course he's gonna say shit like that. Like, I'd love for this to be a hard choice for me. I'd love for us to have controversy, which, in all honesty, he's not wrong, and they've done that before. If you look at the 1991 season where Troy got injured, and the backup was winning, they were like, Troy was like, I'm ready to go back in. It's like they held. It's like Dak, I think, seeing the writing on the wall is like, I think I might be ready this week, and we're like, dude, we don't really need you against Washington.
Can he even squeeze a ball yet, though?
I don't know. I wouldn't put anything past that dude. Like, I think he's tough. Like, everybody's like, God, that guy's falling apart, and I'm like, no, that guy's just. The ankle thing is a freak thing. The hand thing is a freak thing.
That's one of the worst NFL injuries I've seen, man.
As soon as I saw that was.
And on TiVo or DVR, if you tried like 40 minutes later to rewind, I don't watch it out. They did. Yeah.
A lot of times they won't show that stuff. That's why I'm surprised lately. Like, a lot of times they'll cut from it and they're like, oh, you can't see that. Like, if it is gruesome, they're just like, oh, we don't show that anymore. And that crazy mofo tried to like pop it back in, like, I'm just gonna pop this back in and get over there.
It was
and we got
pointed
stuff
the
to
other
do.
way.
Yeah, it's like
bro, he's been
you
through
watch him
so
bang
much.
his ankle on the ground to like get it back in place because he's just like, oh, that's weird. Let me get this back in place, run over there so we can like. That's his mindset, and I appreciate that about him. The hand thing, that's a freak thing. That's happened to Cousins. That's happened to guys. You've seen them where they're throwing, their hand comes through. They hit a guy on the helmet where they're like, that stuff happens. Because one of my docs that works with me, she's like, she's a Cowboys fan. She's like, he's just falling apart. Like, he's injured all the time. And I'm like, can we really say injured all the time? Like, the dude basically had what could have been career-ending injury of like, 100%. If your leg doesn't work again,
look at
you're
Alex
out.
Smith, man. Yeah.
And came back, and everyone's like, I think we're so prisoner of the moment. We're so, what have you done for me lately? So Cooper Rush is winning. So it's like, Dak sucks. And I'm like, dude, we had one of the number one offenses the last 2 years with, of course, we had Amari Cooper. We had weapons. We had Michael Gallup. Like, I think people are hopefully starting to realize, again, trust me, I've drank all the Kool-Aid. There's no Kool-Aid left for anyone else. But
all the blue Kool-Aid.
I'm also not the one that's like, we're going to the Super Bowl every year. Like, I know everyone's like, that's what, and I'm like, well, that's what called being a fan is. Like, when you're a fan, when you get ridiculous, you get ridiculous like that. I'll shoot it to you as straight as possible. Like, I have a bet with someone on week 6 with the Eagles, and I was like, shit, I don't know about that. Like,
Hurts is playing.
And he's the X factor. Like, Dan has to have a scheme where he's like, just you're a spy on him the whole time. Like, we have to overload one side to force him a direction, and then have a spy.
It's like boxing one in basketball. You just got to put Micah on him. 100%.
You're gonna have to be like, listen, we're gonna be manned up. We're gonna do some weird blitz schemes, and we're gonna do a lot of things to push one side and have people backing up, spying on him. because Daniel Jones ran all over us.
Yeah.
So you think
I know it.
You think Hurts isn't going to create that?
He's a deceptive athlete, Daniel Jones is.
I feel bad for that guy. I really do.
You?
Well, just because like
circus up there too, man.
It is a circus. He hasn't really ever had the ability to have like some consistency with what he's doing.
I feel bad for Saquon too.
Yeah,
because man, that dude's a stud.
You just talk about like, some guys like it's like I look at JJ Watt. Like JJ Watt just unfortunately was never in a situation where it's like, dude, I got plugged into the right place at the right time at the right setup. It's like Tom Brady on any other team probably with that. Yeah. It's like he's Tom Brady. So could he probably have gotten that done? Yes, but it's like I don't know with the situation. Like that guy was fortunate for the place that he ended up to be where he was. Same with Eli. Eli was like whatever drafted by the Chargers, and he's like, I'm not going there. I'm holding out. Yeah. And then they end up sending him over to the Giants, and then he's like the Brady killer. He's the only guy that's held Brady out of his 2 losses in Super Bowls.
He owes David Tyree like a Porsche every summer, bro, for that call, for that catch, man.
Dude, Plexico Burress, like he's like, hey, no man, doubt. Me and you. Which I also, the thing that drives me nuts again as a Cowboys fan is like, if you look at teams that have a definite number 1 receiver, like Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams, when they were together, you know exactly where it's going, and he's going to do it, and they're still going to do it to you.
Even Tony and Dez.
Yes, and I feel like we've lacked that a little bit, where it should be like, listen, y'all know where this is going, and you're still not going to be able to stop it.
Shouldn't it just go to CD every time? But did you see that drop last week, man, or on a Monday night? That was unbelievable, man.
It was, but then he made up for it. So again, I'm one of those people like very much prisoner of the moment. Like I'm out on you, you're fired, like you're done, like you're done for me. Like that is your like that's not even your job. Like my coach used to tell me when I played college football, he'd be like, "What's your job?" We'd be like, "To catch passes." He's like, "No." That's that's understood. That's what you should do. Your job is to score touchdowns. And I was like, shit, okay, coach,
Where'd you go to college?
So I played at a small school in Winfield, Kansas called Southwestern College.
Right on.
So I played tight end there for a couple years.
Did you grow up around here?
So I grew up around a small town in southwest Oklahoma called Sayre. Super tiny town.
So that's where the Oklahoma State.
Yeah, so that's where the Oklahoma comes from.
Right
went there, played football. My high school coach was a dickhead. Screw you.
A lot of them are.
Well, so the college I ended up going to, 2 of my friends in high school got offers from them. And I was looking at either going to play basketball or going to play football. And I had some JUCO basketball offers. And I submitted in order to go to the school because I'm like, 2 of my best friends are going there. Right. I go there like, this will be awesome. So they accept me. And after our first season, my roommate and friend that I live with towards ACL was like, I'm out on this shit. Like, this ain't for me anymore. The other one flunked out. And so I remember sitting down with the coaches one time and I'm like, I'm just curious because I'm the only one that's still here and you went after those mofos. How come you didn't go after me? And my coach goes, we did. And your high school coach said, it's not worth the time. Like, don't even do it. It's not worth it. Like,
what, he thought you were too in on basketball or something?
No, I just don't. Coach? I was talking to somebody about this today because.
Or did your high school coach think you were difficult?
I think he thought I was difficult, and I think it was.
We got a lot in common, bro.
Yeah, I'm again. There's an underlying thing of like I can be a pain in the ass. I'm sure, and my kids are young. So I have a daughter that just turned 1, and I have a daughter that's getting ready to turn 5. And so you start talking about school and where they go and what that's going to look like and doing everything. And I just have a different outlook on school now, just as coming through an adult, going through a professional program and thriving in a professional program as to in school. I was the lazy kid that never applied himself, but I'm like, you just never challenged me.
Yeah.
Like it sounds probably arrogant to say of just like, well, you weren't challenging enough for me, but it's like you weren't. I was different in the way that I am. All you ever told me was he does his work well, but he talks too much. And I'm like, who's laughing now? That's pretty much what I do for a living.
Was pretty much the only thing that kept you engaged in your academics, the sports in school? Me too.
The hanging out with my friends, the social aspect, the sports stuff, the things that challenged me and that were fun. It was like that was the stuff that I wanted to do.
Did you do like public speaking or theater or anything like that?
Never did. I was terrified of that stuff when I was younger.
One of your teachers should have been like, come over over here. You're scared, but you should
That's
memorize
what I'm saying.
these
Somebody should be like, you should do this. You should. They should have tried to foster that. Which again, later on in my life, my dad did and really helped me. Like, you know, it was just like when I would work for them and do stuff. It's just like there's not like hold on, I'm scared. It's like, hey, you're gonna do this. Go do it. And I'm like, shit. I guess I better figure this out. But I think that's what later in my life helped me thrive, and now I get to look at my little ones and see these beautiful gifts and energy and just like who they are, and I'm like, it's my responsibility to protect that, and I don't want any dumbass out there to go to try to put their
just get on the conveyor belt.
Yeah, just like jump in here, become the 9-to-5er, do these things.
Go to college.
And if you want to do that, I'm so happy for you. You want to be a marketing, you want to do this, you want to get into sales. Like, if that is what drives you and you're on fire for it, then I love it. But I've got to watch her. Like my oldest daughter, Remington, dude, she'll take over a room. Everyone knows who Remington is.
After the firearm?
No, I was hesitant of that. That's just a name my wife has been obsessed with since we got married.
I like it.
And so when we found out we were having a daughter, it was like, okay, Remington, we'll call her Remy.
That's great.
But she just has this. She just wins people over. Like she'd be in here in 2 seconds. She'd be your best friend, and she'd be like, "Yeah, you should let me." She'll talk you into shit that you're just like. She's this like very assumptive, like, "Oh, I like your phone," and then you're looking at it, and she's like, "Cool, let's look through those." Like she's like, "I don't have a phone, but I know you've got one, and I'll figure out a way to get access to that." Or she'll do stuff like I just catch it now, like working and like understanding things, and she's like an assumptive closer. She's like the
friendly bully.
She just like says things, and she's like, you know, like even in like wanting to eat something, and it's just like, yeah, you know, like pancakes, and I'm like, you want some pancakes? And she's like, yeah, you know what, that's a good idea. Exactly. as if it was my idea when she implanted that.
She's just working like, Jedi mind tricks on you.
She just is. She has this natural ability, and she, you know, wants to make sure everyone's included. She wants to be everyone's friend. She has this energy that I feel like is just infectious. When we take her to church and check her into those classes, everyone knows Remy. At school the other day, there's this kid, Levi, in her class, and it was his first day, and he was nervous. And I guess my wife ran into the other mom, and she was like, "Hey, I just wanted to thank you for Remy." And so she was like, "Well, what happened?" And she was like, "Well, Levi, when I dropped him off, was having a rough day." And then she said, "But he was happy at the end of the day." And I said, "What happened?" And he goes, "My friend Remy came over and she made sure that I was okay. No. And then I had a really good day, Mom." And I was like, so she saw him feeling alone, left out, nervous, worried, crying. And she went over and was like, "Hey, are you okay?" And like checked in on him and then brought him in. So she's like the facilitator that, "Hey, we're having a party. Yeah. Why aren't you in this party too? And you should come over here and hang out too." Like cool. She's so intuitive to people's energy. So she's like, ooh. And because we work with her on that stuff of like, I want her to feel like she has the ability to have what I consider, I think, is one of the strongest things you can have, just emotional intelligence, the ability to be aware of that, but to also control your own. So then it's like, nobody comes in and pushes your buttons. I'm in control of this thing. You don't get to come in and be like, dictate where my head's gonna go, or trying to do this
stoic.
The way that the machine would like for us to do. It's just like, do as I say, not. And I'm like, no. We will have a house of free thinkers. You can challenge me all you want. That's fine. Doesn't mean that I'll ever let you win or that you're right.
Right.
But I have no problem with that. And I was raised in a house that way. My wife cannot stand it. I cannot believe that nobody in my family hasn't become a lawyer. We just love to argue, but out of fun. Like I will take the opposite side of a point that I don't even believe,
just for the
and
fuck
I can
of it.
Argue it just for the. So we will do that sometimes. And my wife's like, "I can't stand when y'all get like this." And my sister's into it. My brother, we're just like, I'm into it. I'm good. Like, it's funny to us to just watch, and you'll watch somebody else come by and be like, "Yeah, but did you?" Like, we'll just poke and interject to have fun,
right?
But that's fun to us. And then we're like, "Y'all want to have dinner? You want to go have a movie?" Like, we don't care. My wife's family is just very much like not like that at all. But I'm like, we're just like that. That's how that's fun. Like, what is the point of just sitting here like, why can't we have a conversation? It's my biggest frustration with anything, and why I love doing stuff like this is like, we don't ever have the ability to just talk.
No.
And even if we're sitting here and I'm like, "You don't like Biden?" I'm like, I don't know. Like, and the ability to sit there and have that conversation and then go, my thing is always like, I know where I stand, but I've got no problem looking at things from your point of view. And I'm like, I get how you could feel that way. But have you looked at this side of it too? Like, in all honesty, like you were talking about, I don't love Trump either. There's things that I think Trump did great. He also is a dumbass sometimes. Like, there's no need to always be divisive. Like, there's times to use divisiveness to get people to decide, and then there's also the moments which he did good at. Sometimes it's like, hey, we've won. It's over. It's good.
Yeah.
Hillary did it. We're fine. Like, are you still going to go after her? Guys, we're good. We did what we needed to do. I was able to achieve what I was trying to achieve. Now it's about us as a collective. And so, you know, if somebody, I feel like if you say certain things now, it means certain things about you.
Yeah, you're on team this or team that.
If you're a Republican, then you must be white. Then you must be racist.
Yeah.
Then you must be angry. Then you must be a bigot.
Just because
then you must not believe in women's rights.
You're
exactly.
racist.
Exactly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it's these things, and I'm like, no. I'm like, I think, in all honesty, it's like I really want for you to be able to do whatever you want to do as long as it's not affecting or inhibiting anyone else. Like, again, I almost remain out of it because, like, I've got patients who are gay. I know people that are gay, and I really don't care. It's not my job to sit here and be like, why are you, and try to dive into this. I'm like, that is the life that you've chosen to live. You outwardly live your sin or whatever you want to call it. That's how you've chose to live life. But I don't care. I think people should be able to have their guns. I think they should be able to smoke whatever things they would like to without us being able to say, well, we have to be in charge of this. It's like, who said that your fingers have to be entangled in all this bullshit in order for me to be able to live my life this way? Who said that you have to be the one that facilitates and controls whether I do Western medicine or Eastern medicine, or I do plant medicine, or I do, like, why are there certain things that are cool and then certain things that aren't cool?
Yeah.
And
why are there these people who feel as though it is their obligation to our society be the arbiters of everything?
Yes, and it's the fringe ones that do that.
Yeah.
And then it's the rest of us that are just like,
well, they're painting everything
ridiculous.
with these hugely broad brushes, and you're like, whoa, hold the phone. Yeah. There's way more complication to this than you guys are making it seem.
Well, and that's even, I love, God, I can't even think of her name. It's the,
Tulsi?
No. She's the black girl that's Republican.
Candace?
Candace,
Yeah.
yes. Because I watched a video on her the other day. She destroyed someone on feminism, and she's like, feminism isn't feminism anymore. It's not back in the day when we couldn't vote. She's like, it's a movement to take down actually masculinity. Mm-hmm. It's a movement to actually use our repressed isms to actually be able to then attack men and whatever it is. And she's like, look what it's done for us. Look where it's led us. Look at where we're at. It's not a good thing. And we're also unfortunately been so plugged into systems that your mom's mom said that being a Democrat was what you had to be because those are the people who were for the marginalized, the people that were on the outside. And now all they do is know we have those people, so we just manipulate you. And that's frustrating. It's like, you can't be black and support Trump. You can't be racist and support Biden. Like,
those
you just
words
can't.
were said.
Yeah.
Those words were said, man. That's what's so unbelievable.
It just makes no sense to me.
If you're black and you support Trump, then you ain't black.
Yeah.
That's what Uncle Joe said from the basement.
And this Black Lives Matter and all that stuff. And again, there's a lot of stuff where it's like, if any of that I'd be like, I don't believe that I would stand with that. That doesn't mean that I don't stand with people of color. That means I don't know that movement, I don't know the people behind it. I haven't done any research. I think the people that are behind it aren't even African American.
Yeah.
Which again,
a lot of money going.
Yeah. Like most people are like, I'm not
houses.
African American. They're like, I'm a black American. I'm a person of color. However you want to describe it. Like, that's where I get lost too. The hell am I supposed to say?
Yeah.
You're a person to me. Your color is different than mine, but what does that matter?
Well,
but
I think,
also,
if you turn the news off, maybe even if you turn off, and I
don't listen to it. Yeah, I'm like, I don't even
hardly know what's going on with that hurricane, and I'm in restoration construction, so I know I got a lot of friends going to Florida to help them rebuild.
Mine's all through social media. Like, I'll see what stuff I want to see there, and then I just determine, like, for me, what the filter is. So it's like, there are pop culture things, that I'll be aware of because I'm going to take that meme and I'm going to tell my story through that meme because that's what everyone on the internet is talking about. But I don't have time to dive into that stuff. Like, a lot of times I feel like this overarching big political stuff, I'm like, that doesn't even really apply to us a lot of times. It's your local government that we should be most concerned about, because
100%.
those are the guys that are going to be doing things
Yes.
that affect your life, your neighborhoods, your schools,
Yep.
the people around you. It's like, that's the sort of stuff that we should really be caring about. And
Local and state, man. Like micro, local, and state.
and we're also confused as hell. Like the system is very much so weirdly separate that you can't even get shit done when it needs to get done. Like, part of my even weird look on school now is like the whole Uvalde situation. Like, I have to now as a parent sit there and wonder and worry about that stuff. Am I ever going to get that call? Is there ever going to be a thing? And then it was my kid's school, and then I'm shitting my pants, and I'm on the way over there, and I'm kicking a window in to try to make sure I get kids out.
Because everyone else is standing by waiting for orders.
Because it's like, I'm not going to do that. So I'm not one of these people that's like, take our guns. I'm one of the people that says, we do need to figure out change here. We do need to figure out, like, we need to have systems and protocols and plans in place. You're telling me you can't make it more difficult to get things into school? I don't care. You're telling me you can't figure out a way for schools to be able to have some level of security? You're telling me, again, you'd have to go through extensive background checks, but you're telling me we can't have a way for ex-military to now have a job because they do Overwatch for a school in order to make sure that everything's cool? They're like, hey, I just sit here. We watch things.
Seriously.
If anything's going down, we're here. We make sure, like, those kids are precious, and to the person that raised and birthed that child, they mean everything to that person.
No doubt.
Everything.
Can you imagine the trauma in those lives now?
No, it breaks my heart.
Could you imagine the
It's
trauma then having to watch that video? I don't
it's
even
all
know.
of it. And then also to use it was used more as a political.
Oh, yeah.
It was used as, Beto O'Rourke is using that as, this is my moment. Fuck you, dude. No one should be using this as their moment.
No.
This should be the moment where we go, this is what brought us together. Like Patrick Bet-David. I love Patrick Bet-David.
He's great.
I was fortunate enough through my coaches to actually get to meet the dude. He is
Nice.
a fantastic dude. And he talked about some of the things that have changed us. Unfortunately, he's like, you have to realize COVID, we could have made it about someone else and it could have brought us together, but they saw that as the moment to segregate Trump out and to do all this. Because he's like, I don't like the example, but 9/11, he was like, that was something that it didn't matter. Didn't matter religion, didn't matter political view, didn't matter anything, because it just washed all that shit out. And we're like, we're all just Americans.
Yep.
And this shit is devastating. And we had to come together to support one another because someone outside of us decided to come against us. And we could have used that so many times, but now we do this. I know there's a term for it, but like literally you just grab onto it and you're like, oh,
Just group thing.
yeah, you literally just jump onto that thing. And then it's like, Beto showing up whenever our, current political people are having this thing and they're having a statement and he's like, shame on you and all this shit. And they're like, get that guy out of there. And I'm like, you wanted that because you knew what it was going to do.
Right.
You knew where that was going to go. It was all theater. It
Yep.
wasn't about let's make change here.
No.
Because we do, as a person who has guns in his home, I do believe that we need change. But if you just outlaw them, people are just going to figure out a way to get that shit illegally.
100%.
And it will happen. And the people who can get it better are going to be the ones that are equipped that we probably don't want equipped.
Have you always been a free thinker? You said you were raised to kind of see, would you hear things culturally and be like, oh, slow down? Oh, just right off the bat, was that something that your mom and dad were?
So I would give that. So when I grew up, I was around my dad here and there with my stepmom. Like I met my dad when I was 8 years old. So
okay.
I was a product of a one-night stand. So my parents were never together. How they were even together to create me is an anomaly because they can't stand each other. So I'm like, however that happened,
alcohol's a wonderful thing.
I was about to
bro.
say, I'm very grateful because I'm here and I exist and now I have a family and I feel like I
real.
get to make the impact for my life. But my mom has always sort of been the black sheep in her family, separated out away from those things. So it's one of those things for me that I'm like, I probably got some of that from her. It's just like the ability to do that. My stepdad and my mom were always willing to do like whatever it was necessary outside of that. Didn't care if the rest of the family was judging them on stuff or you don't bring the kids around us enough or do all this. It's like, We don't give a shit. We're doing what's right by them, and we're doing what's right by
cool.
us.
I love it.
And so I think I have some of that. And then my dad is very much that way too. We love to question things, like I said, and argue over things and do stuff. So for me, I feel like it was modeled in front of me very well. And I was fortunately given enough time in order, like, I probably wasn't like this when you're very impressionable and you're just trying to fit in and you're trying to find yourself like in your early 20s. I probably wasn't, because it's like you just try to, it's like survival. You're just like,
Totally.
I have to fit into the tribe here. So if the tribe does this shit, then I guess I have to do this shit to survive. But as you get older and you start to realize that, it's like, I don't necessarily always outwardly express or share or think everything, because I don't like to marginalize my audience. Trust me, during everything going on, I had patients that come in that would talk about how amazing Biden is. I had patients that come in and talk about, you know, they got every single vaccine. I had patients that are like, I will never touch that thing. It's like the Jordan thing. I don't care. Everybody buys shoes. I don't care. So for me, it's like, if you know me and you're like someone that's like in my community and we've connected, like, you probably know that about me. You know where I stand on certain things, but I don't necessarily use that as a leverage point to segregate my audience out or to gain attention or do anything like that. I'm like, I think there's easier and better ways to do it. Doesn't mean in the future I won't change my mind and go, y'all fucking driven me nuts. I'm standing up for this.
So
I'm probably going to lose a bunch of my audience, but the ones who really love me are really going to love the shit out of me.
You're going to turn heel like in the WWE.
Exactly. So I'm like,
yeah.
I don't mind doing that. But I would say that's probably just always been something that's there. And like my mom would just probably always push me towards that of like, why are you worried about that? That stuff does not matter. Why are you worried about that group of people? Why are you worried about those things that those people say? Like, and I was even telling my wife last night, I was watching, was putting my oldest to bed, and I saw this video on TikTok, and it was this mom, she's recording this son, and he's walking out to the car for school. And she's like, where are we going? And he's like, to school. And she's like, what for? And he's like, to go to school. And she's like, who are we going to see? And he goes, my crush. And she's like, are you excited? And he's like, yeah. And he's all excited because that's like his crush.
Sure.
Then it cuts to a scene of the mom recording him. He's on the phone with his dad. And he's like, my crush cheated on me with my best friend. This toy thing that he had, he lost it. And you're just like, and it hit me. And I was like, fuck. Some little dickhead. Like, I love my life right now. I love my kids. I'm in such a place where I can protect and keep them safe. And I'm like, some little shithead girl or dickhead is going to do that to my sweet child and cause them to come home. And I have to fix that. And it's going to break my heart.
No doubt.
In order to try to be there. But then just watching, I'm like, but then I get the ability to then make the impact on that. So, you know, he's like crying. He's into, you feel for him. Like, there's that parent thing in you where you're like, oh, buddy, I feel that.
Yeah.
I feel it so hard. But then his dad is like, buddy, I'm so sorry. Like, he's talking to him. And then it cuts to another thing. The mom records him later, and the dad shows up, and he like brought him a bag of Doritos. And he's like, here you go, buddy. And he's like, oh, thanks, Dad. And he's like, and he pulls out a toy, and he's like, also, I brought you this. Because if you listen in the story, he lost one of his toys. That's probably like a big deal to him. It just went missing. And so it was like, all this stuff, it's like everything falls apart. And so his dad gave him this. He's like, Dad, thank you. And then he gives him another one. And he's like, I know you like this one too. And he's like, what? And then he goes, oh yeah, and this one too. And gives him a third one. And the kid is just so grateful. But you watch it like shift their energy like that. And so it's like, unfortunately, I'm going to have to be prepared with that stuff. And dear Lord, like chocolates and things and all the things. And I'm hoping to be able to teach them and guard them. Like, I know it's impossible to protect them from those things. I want to. But I want her to hopefully be so emotionally mature that she gets it. She understands. Like, it doesn't, she's sort of like Teflon. It just won't stick, hopefully. Yeah. Even though I know there's going to be the one or this boy or this thing. Like, I know that stuff's going to happen.
Have you, growing up, were you dialed in on, I can't wait to have kids, I want to be a dad? Or when it happened, did your life change a lot? Did you as a person change a lot? Was it something that, you know, was kind of on your timeline, on your vision board, or how did all that happen?
It definitely was. So I knew I was going to get married early. Like, again, sports and like groups, like I do better in a tribe, in a community, in a group. That's always me. It's not just me solo. Maybe I'm the tip of the spear, but it's like we're running together as a group here. So with my office, the Specific Chiropractic Centers, we have 13 offices all across the United States. We're growing. Like, I just brought on new docs into my office. Like, that's a team with a mission, with a purpose, with a goal of where we're trying to go. So for me, being in sports and always seeing that, I was like, the thing that I know is I don't do well on my own. When I'm off on my own, I lean into chaos. I tend to not do well for myself. And so anytime that I start to stray away or that I do that, I don't make the best decisions. So for me, there's just always something inherent and innate in me that was like, I was going to get married young. So I got married at like 23. So not super young, like, oh, hey, 19 years old, got married, but was something for me that I was like, that's what I'm looking for. Like I sort of had that spend your time dating around and being a dickhead and doing all that stuff. And then it was like, I'm kind of past this, like at a very early age. Like, you know, in college, I didn't realize like when the movies show you that college is just like partying all the time. Man, when I went, I was like, holy shit, this just ain't the movies. Like, we party whether we win, we party whether we lose. Like, it's like, holy shit, this is what this is like. And for me, I was like, why? Like, I wake up the next day, I feel like shit.
Right.
We do, like, what is the point and the purpose of this? It's not doing anything to better me. I'm not anti, like, having a drink. Like, I got no problem going to get a drink or doing that. And yes, I've had my moments just like anyone does. But I feel like there's like, what is the benefit? What's the point? So I sort of burnt myself out on that quickly.
Sure.
And so, unfortunately, in doing that, I had built up all these weird, you know, you have your way. This is how I talk to, this is how I get girls. Not this. I had all these things based on that because, unfortunately, I had some bad advice when I was younger, and I had an uncle of mine that was like getting me ready for basketball, and he was like, dude, you're gonna be the shit. Like, he just filled my head, made it big as fuck. And so I was like that for a long time. It's part of why God gave me daughters, because I treated women like shit when I was younger.
Boy.
The lesson was,
Yeah.
hey, and so again, I have to look back and go, it still got me where I am, and I love where I'm at now, but it's like, sure, everyone has regrets. So for me, it was that understanding of like, I do better in teams. I know that I need this. And so my wife was like that thing that stuck out from all the others. It was like, ooh, she's a little bit older than I am. So it was just like, she's more mature. She had a job. She like just all these things that I was like, she's not into doing all these things. Like, I was very much attracted. Like, this girl's very different.
Like an anchoring energy of
For
some
sure.
sort.
It was just like, she has that, like all these other girls, I'm like, yeah, let's date. And they're like, you want to go to this thing with me? Let's go do this. And it's all like going to a party and doing all this stuff. And I'm like, I was very much into CrossFit and like working out and doing all this stuff at the time. So I was like very much focused on me. So I'm like, why aren't you doing shit to like better yourself? Like, that's always been one of my highest values.
Afraid of missing out, bro.
Yeah. It's like doing things that pour into me, because I'm like, I can miss out on whatever. But and especially if it's for something that's going to benefit and better me or my family or my community or the people who entrust me to take care of them, then I need to do that. And she was very much like, I was just attracted to that. And like, she called me on my shit. Like, I always joke about when we met, that was back in the day when you would like write on each other's Facebook walls and shit. So we're just like all over each other's Facebook walls and talking on Facebook. And I met her at the CrossFit gym where I was going. She was like one of the first members that was ever there. It was buddies of mine that we were at a different gym. They started it. They brought me over as a coach, and I was like, hell yeah. And I'm glad I did. That's where I met my wife. But she was like anti any of my bullshit games. She just called me on that
Straight
shit.
off the bat?
Yeah. And so it was like, you know, I'd like kind of play around. She's like, is that your way of asking for my number? And I go, no, but you can have mine. And she goes, peace, deuced me for like a month. Didn't even talk to me. And I was like, what the hell? We were talking all the time. This is great. I like this chick. And then on my birthday, she hit me up and was like, hey, happy birthday, all that stuff. And like, she was unwilling to put up with any of that old bullshit that she's just like,
did you have to grow up fast?
I did.
Was it like, you said she was real mature, so.
She was. So it's one of those where
Did you know you were immature before you met her? Or were you like, yeah, but everyone else does the same thing? Or
sort of. I feel like, again, like, you know how guys are. We don't grow up. I'm still not grown up.
Well,
the older I get, I'm still like, dude, I'm 24 in my mind.
Let's go skydive, bro.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm that guy.
100%.
And that's just my energy.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm starting to become aware of like, oh, that'll be me for a long time now. And I'll just be like, do you ever grow up? Do you ever not tell a dick joke? Do you ever not? And I'm like, not really, because that's just me, unfortunately.
Hey,
like,
some of the funniest people in the world are telling dick jokes for a living.
I mean, I'm just saying. So there is the aspect of that side of it. But it was just, there was something like, it was just like, that's what I need. There was an energy that attracted me to that. And then fortunately, she saw through a lot. I was like the diamond in the rough for her. It was like, I dressed based off how my dad dressed, which was a horrible example.
What are we
So,
talking about here?
We're talking like jean shorts. We're talking like Nike golf stuff or shirts that say shit on it, and like
themed
dad
t-shirts,
tennis shoes. Yeah, like, like the Walmart t-shirts
yes.
that just say dumb stuff.
Yes, bro.
And it was just like I was her project because mom was very much into fashion, and like she's very well put together always. Like always the best dressed, always dressed to the nines. Like. And fortunately for me, she saw through that and was like, "Okay, there's something."
So no more Metallica
here.
T-shirts with a flannel over
Yeah,
it?
nothing, none of that. No Chuck Norris posters. No,
yeah.
no, none of that stuff. And fortunately, she saw through those things to like the potential that I had, and so, we took a little while. Then I went over. Then we started dating. Then we got more serious. And then for us, kind of with the timeline of things of like I was finishing up college, planning on going to chiropractic school. She wanted to do that with me. We were going to be moving out of Tulsa and going to Texas to do that. And I was like, I just wanted to see what would happen. So I'm like, let me see if I can get conditionally accepted to Parker. I got conditionally accepted. What stuff do I need to do? We need to do this. So because we were young, your parents are like, this is a bad idea. What the hell do you think y'all are doing?
Sure.
And so we were smart and we're like, well, then let's just come up with a plan and show that we know how to do this and we can figure it out. Like you and I together as a team, we'll have a whole plan. We'll have it all mapped out. And so went through all that, had a plan. Went one weekend, one time to go meet her family in Texas. She drove me down. I was nervous as shit. I'm just like, oh my gosh. Like it's like a 4-hour drive to me to go meet these people. And I'm like, God, I really hope they like me. And so hanging out with her family, it was great. And then we had sort of had this plan of like what we wanted to do. I went with her friends to go look at rings and do all that. Like we're starting to like get towards that area, and then
team effort though it sounds like
it was her friends helped me a
big
lot.
Team guy over here.
I didn't know nothing about nothing.
Is that proverb true? You can go fast alone, but you go far together?
Yes.
And we'll talk more about sustainability in a while, but you keep bringing this up, which is cool because I'm a big team guy too. Mm-hmm. And it really bums me out sometimes, though, man, because I get around people, I get excited. I'm like, we can do this together. And then people fall off or people lose hope.
It's hard, yeah.
And you're just like, what
Guys, just stick to the mission.
So so what do? You text them all and you're like, hey, I'm going to go get her. We got to go. You got to come help me find this ring. And they're like, this is where we're going and this is what she likes?
Yep. So I hit up
How'd you get the size? That's the hard part.
Because I had very specific parameters.
Well, like the actual thing, like ring
but
size,
I knew all
though.
That stuff.
Did
like
you?
We had gone to, which I'll tell you that story. That was a whole nother story. I wanted to punch this one dude in the face. I was like, "You're such a dick." So I'm a college student, barely working for my parents, hustling like part-time like. I'm not sitting there going, yeah, I've got a trust fund back here with all this cash in it. That's not the case. I'm living with my parents. They basically provide most of it, and I've got a little bit here. And I basically used my college loans in order to be able to get her a ring.
Yeah.
But
well, you just got $10K back, bro.
Yeah, it was just like, hey. I'm like, hey.
2 weeks ago, hey.
Got that $5,000 check. I was like, I know where this is going. So I hit up some of her friends. Like Lindsay is still one of her best friends. Lindsay was actually just staying with us at our house this last week. Like she was in our wedding. Her and Haven are still super close. Her and I did not get along before previously, but get along much better now. I think it's because I was the person that was like coming in to take Haven away from her.
Sure.
And they had all gone to college together, and then now roommated together in an apartment together, and like it was at Oral Roberts University in Tulsa, and I was the outsider. Like everyone in that crew married inside of that crew did it. Like everything was, you had to be an Oral Roberts person in order to do that. I'm some rando.
That's a tight-knit community.
Yeah, I'm some rando getting plugged in here, and she's like, who the hell is this guy? What is he about? And he dresses like shit. Are you sure this is the guy?
Yeah.
So they take me, and I had very specific, like my wife is very much like, well, what do you think? Like there's the 5 C's of getting a ring: cut, the color, the clarity, the what, like. And I was like, the carrot. I was like, yeah, totally. And she's like, well, what do you think? And I said some dumb shit, and she was like, oh, that's not the thing. And so I don't want my wife to sound like I love my wife to death. She's very particular about what she wants, and I appreciate it. I'm dumb. Just tell me what you want, and I will make it happen, sweetheart. That's all I need. Just give me the precise instructions.
Point me in a direction.
Correct.
Yes,
and everyone loves her ring still to this day.
There you go.
She was very specific about it. So she wanted a pear-shaped diamond with a halo around it.
Okay.
with what is called a split shank band.
I know that.
So the split shank opens on the side and goes, and it closes together on the diamond. Well, you can only find pair diamonds with a solitaire band,
right?
Or split shank goes on an oval diamond. You cannot find the combo of the two. So I go to this place, Israel Diamond Company, which was a great place to get it, by the way, because I got like a $10,000 ring for like $5,000. Now that we look back on it, I'm like, y'all definitely hooked me up. So thank you.
Legit.
And again, I got her like the nicest clarity. It has no imperfections, any of that stuff. You don't know.
No.
Like I get it.
Yeah.
But it was for her. I'm like, this is the ring. When you get the ring, you don't get the one that's got like a bubbled thing, whatever in it. You get the one.
Were you
get
looking
the nicest...
through the scope?
Oh, dude, yeah,
like,
they do the thing.
See the feather right there?
See this one? This one kind of looks like shit. But see how this one looks amazing?
It's got some yellow to it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, and you're like,
you know exactly every dude. And I made the mistake too of having 3 of her friends there as I'm picking and saying which diamond we're talking about. So fortunately at this place they go, we can build this thing. So they custom made me this thing. Ended up like working out perfect. So they're like, yeah, we could build all this out. We could do it perfect. Anytime we go there, literally she can go get it clean. They go throw that thing in the machine, clean it up. Looks brand new.
They want her in there as often as possible.
Of course.
Bro.
And they're like, hey, you ever want to trade that thing in and get something else? I'm like, slow up.
Let's get to 20 locations nationwide. And
which she wants to do. And I'm like, hey, we will, but I don't think we'll trade in that ring. I think we'll keep it, and that will go to one of our kids.
There you
It'll
go.
be like, I would love
you
for
gotta
it to
keep
be
that first one.
I would love for it to be a thing that stays in the family, even if our children are like, and it ends up not being a thing. I'm like, that there's value in that. Like, that was the original, like, there's so much story behind that for me. So I end up doing all that. I put my money down. They're going to start making the ring. I haven't asked her dad. I got to do that. I got to do all that stuff. So we're like planning. I'm sort of talking to my parents.
Gotta be like your daughter, just assumptive. So I was thinking, your daughter needs a husband.
Exactly. So
hey, what are you thinking on that? Oh, that's a great idea. I should marry her.
So we go to hang out with them, and I just text her dad when we're driving down, and I'm like, hey, at some point this weekend, I'd just like some time to talk to you one-on-one. You know he knows what that means.
Hell yeah.
Friday doesn't happen. Saturday doesn't happen.
Bro, you just got to go at that.
And so Sunday, well, I'm trying to figure out like when we're gonna do it. Like they're taking us, they're doing great. They're like taking us to do stuff. It's not like we're just sitting around and I'm like, well, should we do it now? And you
can't be like, sir, can we go rake some leaves in the backyard together?
So Sunday, because my parents were like, you're not staying at her house. We'll get you a hotel. Like you're not gonna stay at their house. We're not doing that. In order to be respectful, like you're gonna stay at a hotel that's close. So Sunday morning I wake up and I'm sitting in my hotel room, nervous as shit, about to puke and like need the toilet, and just like I'm texting and I'm getting nothing back. Nothing. And come to find out later, that's because they were like gonna sit down with her. Whatever she says is who wins. If she said, I'm sort of on the fence, like I don't know, but like we're figuring out, they probably would have like had some questions. But because she was like, I love him. I know where he's at. I know his heart. I know what I want. Like, we want to do this together. This is why. Like, they trusted her, which is what I want for my daughters. Like, I trust you in this.
Sure.
So they had their little family meeting, and then she goes, hey, come on over. We're having breakfast. Nervous as shit. Can't do anything. They're listening to music. Her dad's, like, taking a shower to get cleaned up so we can go get coffee.
Yeah.
And my mother-in-law, not at the time, but now, she's like, you want anything to eat for breakfast? Like, they've had their, everybody's good. Yeah. They're all on the same page. I'm on the outside. I know nothing. And so I'm like, no, I'm good. Let's take some water. I'm like so nervous. And we go to this Paradise Cafe just off of Tollway on like.
That's a great spot.
Absolutely. So we go there. And
get one of those quiche muffins, man. I know that spot well. Yeah.
And I remember my father-in-law, because we told this story at our rehearsal dinner, and he was talking about when we went up there and we ordered. And I just ordered what he ordered because I didn't want to eat anything. Yeah. I'm like, bro, I'm going to vomit. Like, what are you talking about? And he was like, I want this. What do you want?
You're hungover.
Yeah. And I was like, I'll take that. And one of those muffins, and that'll be good. And I just remember, I'm like, well, you're trying to run through, what do I say? Yeah. What, like, this is the most important pitch of my life. I got to land this. And he just goes, hey, before we start, can I just pray over this whole situation? And I was like, yeah, of course. And like immediately, as soon as he did that, nerves were gone. It was good.
That's cool.
We had like in-depth conversations about like me and my personal life. Like my parents leaned on me heavily. So when you talked about like me always wanting to be a dad and stuff like that, like I got siblings when I was older. So for me, I helped take care of them. So I think I'm very grateful because I think it's what makes me an awesome dad, because I was able to help take care of younger siblings, and I was also just used to being around babies. Like, babies don't weird or gross me out or anything. I'm like, hell yeah, give me your baby. I'll hold your baby. Like, I'm all about that. But we like talked about all this stuff, and then I remember I was like, you know, I was essentially asking like, hey, I want to marry her. And he was like, well, here's what he did. You'll love this. He was like, well, here's what I'd like to do over the next couple months. I'd like to like meet with you every couple weeks.
Wow.
I'd like to sit down and talk. I'd like to do all this. Like, we would just like to get to know you better. And I was like, I think that's awesome. We should do that. There's one problem though. I've already got the ring, and this is what it's going to look like.
You brought it with you?
No, I had like pictures of what they were going to do and all that stuff. And I was like, I've already gotten that, and like showed him, and he like looked at it and he was like, all right, let's do this thing. Like, what's funny about our whole situation, we had our wedding date set, we had the venue booked, we had all the stuff, because you got to book that stuff out when you're going to do it. Before I'd even asked her, because we had everything planned out. See, that's where
your daughter gets this assumptive, this character
so this
quality.
Is where we.
It's a skill.
I just always joke about. They're like, "Wait, you had all that stuff," and I'm like, "Yeah," because to them it was already done.
You already spending the commission.
I just had the. I had the plan of like, it's on this date, and there were so many times I wanted to ruin that. We had this whole event planned for when I asked her to marry me. She did this progressive dinner. She had drinks at one place, appetizers at one place, dinner at one place, and then dessert. They went to the center of the universe in Tulsa. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And then I met her there. I told her I was out of town working with my parents, and it was just this whole thing. And then she sees me and she's like, "You lied to me." And that was the first thing she says to me. And I was like, but it was this whole, it was just funny to me, because I'm like, that showed me how their family works. It's just like, well, if this is what we're doing, then we go do it. Like, we just go at it.
Yeah.
Like, that's how they attack it. And so it's like, she's told me she wanted to marry you, you want to marry her, and we're doing it. Then they're like, we're 100% behind you, and this is what we're going to do. Oh. And so her and her mom were meeting. We pick out the date. They pick out where we're going to have, like I'm involved in any of that. I'm like, you just tell me what to wear and how to show up, and I'm in.
No theme tuxedo. So you both wanted to be chiropractors? Did you bond about that when you met her at the CrossFit place?
No. So that was what I wanted to do. For her, she has just always supported me. Like, she's just always worked. Gotcha. So she, at the time, she went to school for marketing and advertising at Oral Roberts. And at the time, she had been working for a dentistry company, and then she had lost that job, and then she started working for an oil and gas company in Tulsa, which was another thing. We were like, oh, you start working for an oil and gas company in Texas, we'll be raking it in. We'll be living comfortable. That did not happen. Yeah. That was not the case at all. So we're like, well, shit, that didn't work out, which we made it work. But for her, she just saw, like, anything that I do, I get passionate about it. Like, this ain't my podcast, but if we're doing a podcast, I'm like, bro, I'm here and I'm in it. We're doing this thing. Like, I'm giving you everything that I've got whenever I've got that. When I'm recording mine, it's the same thing. When I'm with my patients, it's the same thing. I think I've just always had that. And so she, through all the stuff, through the horrible clothes and all the things, was just like, she could see my heart behind what I was wanting to do.
Sure.
And so she supported me in that. She supported me in the first few years of, when we started our business. I lived with my in-laws for 3.5 years while I was getting my office off the ground. Like, you're just like, I'm so grateful for those times, but it was hard. Like, you got your in-laws living in your marriage with all this stuff, with it being still slightly a new marriage. So it's like,
that is tough. What the hell
is going on here? Like,
that's probably a little bit of a shot to the old ego a tad, too.
It was, and sometimes it's just like, hey, can y'all stay out of our marriage? Like, I can see where y'all have pitfalls. I'm not jumping on your shit. Like, can you just leave ours? I'm like, I'm new at this. Like, we're learning here. But we wouldn't have been able to make it work if that wasn't the case. And then when it was finally time to move out, like everything typically works out for me. It's not in my time. It's in the perfect timing of when we need things to work. I'm like, I need this done tomorrow. And it's like, well, it's going to fall together in 3 months. And I'll just work at it. And then eventually, boom, we're there. So we wanted to live in Richardson. We were living in Farmers Branch with my in-laws. The business was finally getting to a point where I was like, this is risky, but we could do it. It was right before my daughter's first birthday. We had literally living with my in-laws and having a baby while still living with them in their house. And them being like, yep, they had 2 bedrooms upstairs. We live in one. We're getting the baby's room set up in the other one. Like, they were absolutely amazing. They helped me get my business loan for, like, none of my shit would exist without them. It's part of, like, I needed them to come along to be able to be like, yep, we got you on this, so that we could get literally everything going and off the ground. And now we're getting to the point where, like, cool, now it's my time to take care of you just retire and be done. Let me help. You help do some things, and like, you don't have to work like you've been working.
That's
like,
awesome.
It's fun to kind of get to see the transition now. But it was one of those, like, there was a house that we had looked at moving into a year before that friends of ours lived in and was owned by a friend of ours. And it wasn't the right timing. And then they had found a house that had come on the market, and they were going to be cutting their lease short. But they were like, hey, it'll look better if we've got someone to plug in right behind us. And then we're like, hey, we're breaking this. But guess what we brought with us? Someone that will continue paying you money month to month on your mortgage for your house, and you'll be good to go. And so I was like, yeah, I think we can do it. Fuck it. Let's go. And we haven't had any issues. We've always been able to pay our rent and make that stuff work. But in the beginning, it was like, that first night I was like, man, this is awesome. We got our own place. This is great. Now we've moved like a couple blocks over into a new place, and that's been fantastic too. Like, we've loved every part of it, but it's definitely been one of those things of like, I've been fortunate that God always provides the way and the answer. It's just not necessarily always in the way that I see it. Like, we just brought on one of them. She just graduated, and she literally is about to get her license like any day now. And the other girl I went to school with, but like, I was planning on bringing on another doctor. The student, Sarah, that's working with me, she had asked me about a year ago, what would it look like to work with you? And I was like, well, let's figure it out. Let's do it. She signed like a letter of intent. We did all that stuff. Well, Micah, a girl I went to school with, just kind of fell out of the clouds. And she was like, hey, I want to do this work that you're doing. I think I want to do it like this. Would you help me? And I was like, yeah. And I said, I'd help you with an office over here. I'd recommend these things. Or we just moved. We have enough space. I could put you in this room over here. You could work for me. And she was like, yeah, I'm in. And she's like, what do I need to do? And I was like, I kind of put her through the test. I was like, I don't have anything for you. Like, just start practicing. Like, here's the thing. Here's how we do it. Like, show me that you can do this. And she is just like relentless. She just showed up every day.
This faith thing for you been something that you grew up with? Or is that something more that you found in high school or college?
It was sort of always there.
It's big for you.
It is, for sure. It's one of those things that's like an underlying, like, there's moments in my life where my faith and where God showed up, where it was like, okay, I have to believe in your existence only based on the fact of like, the people that you're putting in front of me, there's no way that they can know the things that they do without you speaking into them. Because I'm like, I've never told anyone that. How did you just say that? So for me, I wasn't really raised in a religious household. Like, my wife was. That was very much their life. They always went to church. Like, she was saved when she was very much younger.
She went to a Christian college.
Yeah, she like went to all that stuff. That was her life. That was not me. So my mom would take me to church every once in a while. I was part of like some stuff. I would go to like what is it? The FCA, the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. Sure. Like, I would go to that stuff, but only because that's where your friends go. That's just where they get all the kids. Like, hey, we're giving pizza. Well, we're like, hell yeah, you're going to give me free food. I'll show up. So I was sort of but I was never like, I'm not going to that. And when I was old enough and it's like, hey, you get to choose, I'm not like, hey, I'm like, I'm not going to church. That's dumb. So I had probably a phase like in my later teenage years where I didn't really lean into any of that for a little while. And then in college was where that kind of had like a radical shift of at the end of high school, I essentially got kicked out of my house. I wanted to leave and then chose to go it was for homecoming. I chose to go to a homecoming dance when I was grounded instead of go home after the football game. And
that'll do it.
And it was like, well, I guess I had a note that was like, well, I guess you've chosen that you're a big boy now. Like, you get to do this. And I was like, well, cool. So my buddy that dropped me off, I was like, hey man, I need to go to your place. I need a place to stay. So I moved in with a friend of mine. His family was like, you're still going to go to school. I was working for them at the time. I did plumbing when I was in high school for their company. And so they're like, you'll still work for us. You could live here. You could do all this, but you're still going to go to school. This isn't some bullshit. You don't get a free ride here. It's none of this. And I was like, yes, ma'am, you got it. And like went there. Everyone probably thought I was going to flunk out and do all this. And she was like, we don't play any of that bullshit around here. She's like, you hang out with Matt. I'm not going to let Matt do that. I'm not going to let you do that. And I was like, yep, you got it. So kicked out of that house living with them, then went to college. Then ended up getting kicked out of that house, and I'm like stuck solo at college. It's spring break. The cafeteria's closed. I got no food. So a friend of mine, Jeremiah, I'll remember Jeremiah for the rest of my life. Jeremiah and his brothers are like Boys to Men, the Christian version. They would get together. They sing. I would literally just sit there to listen to them sing. They were amazing. He was one of the nicest guys I've ever met. And during that week, he was one of the only ones there. It was me and him still on campus at the place. And I'm like, running low. Like, I was a college athlete at the time, so I didn't have a job. Like, you don't have time to do all that. So I'm running out of gas. I'm living off of like ramen noodles and a few Pop-Tarts that I have left in my friggin' room in order to make sure that I'm going to survive. And Jeremiah keeps coming by my room and he's like, "Are you okay? Like, I'm just checking in on you. Is everything okay?" And I'm like, "Dude, I'm fine. Leave me alone." Like, dude, you know, it's that thing where it's like, don't worry about me. Like, the protective mechanism goes up and I'm like, "Dude, I'm good. Thanks. I appreciate you. Like, I'm good."
Yeah.
It just keeps coming by. And then one time he like breaks me down, and then I'm telling you the stuff that guy told me, I'm like, there's no way that you would know that unless there's a God that has to exist.
Wow.
Like there has to be something here. So I'm like, okay. So in that moment, I'm like, I don't know what else to do. So I was like, I don't know what this prayer thing is, but I guess I'll just pray. And so I was like, I don't know what to do here. I got no money. I don't have any of this. And I reached out to my stepmom, who I hadn't seen them in a while, and was just like, hey, just kind of told her the situation. She calls me back an hour later. She says, "Hey, just so that you know, we're going to come get you. Your dad's already on his way to come get you. He rented a car. He's on his way out there. He's going to come get you. We're going to get you gas. We're going to come bring you back here to stay with us for the weekend." And I was like, okay, cool. And I'm like, what? Like, y'all, I haven't seen y'all in forever.
Thought you hated me?
Yeah. It's not that they hated me. It's just like I haven't been around.
Yeah.
Like, that for me was like, that's what love of a parent is like. It's
Mm.
just like, you do whatever you need to. Like, when your kids need you, that's when you show up. When someone that you care about needs you, that's when
That's
you
a
show
little
up for them.
traumatic in high school to get kicked out of your house, right?
It is.
For,
It was
like,
all
that was like
sort
permanent.
of yeah, it was very much like a.
Or were you kind of like, okay, you said I'm out. I'm never out. I'm never calling for help. I'm gonna make it on my own.
Yeah, I didn't. I was just like, I guess I'm gonna figure this thing out. Which again, for me, solo, not a good idea. It's that lesson of like, I don't do well solo in this. I don't do well on my own by myself.
Do you believe that in that term, the opiate of the masses, when you get around like-minded individuals, that energy exchange becomes something you can kind of. There are people who, when they get in groups like that, they really don't like it. And there's other people, maybe, are there times when you need to go to a networking thing, or maybe even on your way here, you were like, I'm tired, man. It's Thursday. We got Thursday night football. But then you get there, and then the energy exchange starts happening. You're like, man, this is awesome.
Yep, it feeds me. Like, I literally feed off of that
Have you always known this team thing was in you ever since you were? I've always known that rallying the troops, movies about like teams or armies or whatever were always something I gravitated toward.
Oh yeah, I'm always obsessed with like, that was me and my dad as I got older. Like, our connection point was actually movies. Like, we go see movies all the time.
That's crazy.
Watching
My dad
movies
and I
together.
do too.
Yeah, like I am an endless vat of movie quotes that
are you
probably
what's
before
your
my
what's
time.
your all-time number one?
Oh, that's like
what's your number one? What's in your top 10 then?
So some of my favorite,
are you a Braveheart guy?
I love Braveheart.
A Gladiator guy? A Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels?
Love Gladiator. So probably in my top 3 again. There's so many movies that I love. Like, think about like when you don't feel good or you're tired or you're like stuck there and you're like, I'll watch one of these movies. Like, so some of my, you'll get it because you'll hear the sports ones that are in there. One of my favorite movies is Patriot. I love Patriot.
Yeah.
That
Little
scene when scene when Mel Gibson is just like, oh, when he goes like full savage on those guys that shoot his son. Yes. I'm just like, I don't show it very often, but there's a part of me where that exists. And I'm like, if you ever did anything to the people that I care about, that guy would come out and like, it would probably scare people. Fortunately, I've never had to do it, but there's just a part, I think, in a lot of men that you're just like, oh, like, yeah.
No doubt.
Fuck yeah, get that guy. Like, that's what they deserve. And so everything, like, that movie's hard. Like, it definitely has parts where it hits when Heath Ledger's wife gets locked in that church, and you're like, no, dude, like, there's got to be a way out of this. We got to figure this out. That's also how my brain works. No, we solve things. Hey, you talk about the team thing? Right. Bro, we're grabbing these pews.
Let's go.
We're breaking this church down before they can burn us down.
This thing has windows, man.
Correct.
Let's go. Yeah.
I don't care. Like, I will fight till I suffocate to death to get everybody out of here, because I think we can do it.
No doubt.
We'll pick these things up. We will beat these walls until they're whatever. Like,
you bet.
We have time here. There's got to be time.
Yeah.
So I love that movie. That's always been one of my favorite movies. Miracle. I love the movie Miracle, the hockey movie.
Oh, yeah. Kurt Russell?
Yes.
Okay.
Miracle on
Ice.
Ice.
You'll take it to your fucking grave, bro.
So me and my stepbrother, all growing up, like, I've played all sorts of sports. So I played hockey, football, basketball were really more of my loves, but my brother always loved hockey. So when your older stepbrother is playing hockey, you're like, well, shit, I guess I'll play hockey too.
Sure.
So love hockey, just love everything that movie's about. It's about America. It's about a team.
Yeah.
Like everything that he has to do as a coach, doing things differently. I always see myself very much as I look at and approach things very probably obscure to how most people would attack something, but it's like, that's the route that makes the most sense to me. Again, comedy movies, there's so many that get into the top, but it's like,
Hangover anywhere in that top of those comedies?
I mean, you could put some of those in there. Like that stuff. I'm more of like the classics. Like I love Tommy Boy. I love Black Sheep. I love some of those like
Which Way to the Weight Room? Oh yeah, Kingpin.
I just love. I used to watch some of those movies. So back in the day when my dad was having to pick me up from Sarah, Oklahoma, drive me to Tulsa, Oklahoma, then drive me back, and then drive himself back. He had the adapter that plugged into the cigarette lighter that had the thing that you could plug stuff into, that we would have a TV sitting in the front seat that had the VCR in the TV, and we would be cruising down the road, and he's got like the ghetto version of a TV set up in the car, because he's like,
that's funny.
How else am I going to entertain you for 4 hours?
That's
so we
great.
would just watch movies over and over. We got Matrix in there. We got all like
I love
whatever
it.
movie you just literally. So I think
that's
for
creative
me,
problem solving right
exactly.
there, brother.
So I think for me, that's why I always connect and attach to movies, and then we would just go see movies all the time. There's a lot of
one. My dad
movies.
and I, we would
Remember
always
the Titans.
Sure, Independence Day, Welcome to Earth.
Yep, fantastic.
Oh
movie.
man, my dad will always on July 4th he'll text me Welcome to Earth. He thought, yeah, that was great, because my whole family would go up to Washington on vacation, and I'd be down here doing some sports thing, and my dad would be here working. He'd be like, let's go watch this. And so it's the movies for me are big.
Yeah, that's always.
I'll always
been
get
one of those
fired up at a
pastimes.
good one.
Yeah,
you know,
movies and music. I'm full of lyrics of songs and movie quotes that just like my wife will laugh. Like if it's a movie that we've watched and we've seen, I Love You Man is high on the list. I love Paul Rudd. Paul Rudd is one of my favorites. So
how is he not aged? He's
don't
doing
know.
a lot of stem cell action,
yeah,
brother.
whatever he's doing,
No
I went on that
booze,
regimen too.
stem cells,
Seriously,
and
like
lots
that
of
guy.
some sort of, I don't know. His skincare routine is off the charts.
Hey man, stem cells is where it's at. We're actually getting ready to have some stuff that's going to be going on locally. Yeah, we just partnered up with this new.
I love to hear
stem
it.
cells company.
When was it that you became interested in chiropractic? Is this something in college you got a hurt back and you go
so
talk?
My
to
dad's a chiropractor, so for me it was really more around that. I always had a little bit more of a like. I think men just in general, I don't like to have to take shit. I don't want to have to do stuff. So like I used to have asthma when I was younger. I always had horrible allergies. But I never wanted my mom would be like, well, why didn't you take your stuff? Or why didn't you use your inhaler? I'm like, because I don't want to.
I hate being
I don't want to
tied
have to
to that
rely on
shit.
that shit.
Yeah.
So fortunately, and I would have like, I think again, we're just told like, especially as men, it's just like tough it up, deal with it. Like I kid you not, like I did have like pains and stuff that would bother me every once in a while that I just thought were normal. Like could literally be sitting taking a test, and I would lock up to the point where I can't breathe. Like my whole body would just kind of seize up for a moment. I'd be like, and it would let go, and I'd just go back to normal. And I'm like, I didn't think anything about that. Like, I'm just like, that's weird and crazy and random. But like, I didn't have a lot of people usually have like, oh, I had this, and then a chiropractor saved my life, or did this. It was like, I just got around my dad whenever I was 19. So that whole, they came and picked me up at college, and then I just started to go hang out with them every weekend. They started to realize like, hey, we could use you here at the office. So then they started implementing me there. When I dropped out of the school where I was going to play football, because I was just dicking off there, and actually went to school there at Tulsa with them and was working for them, I was just around that a lot. So I sort of worked my way up even within their business of like, you're sort of in the PT area and you're doing this or you're doing whatever thing. And then it was like the next thing you know, I was like the front desk person that sort of ran the show for them while they were doing their stuff. Like my mom's in the back, my dad's taking care of patients. I'm making sure everything flows. Like I'm the one that kind of orchestrates this. And in that time working in his office, you just see really cool stuff. You see these crazy stories. Like I always tell this story. He had this lady come in one time, and she comes in. She's like in 44, but she's in a wheelchair, and she's completely like 90 degrees hunched over.
Oh.
Can't walk. Comes in, go through the thing, x-ray her, do all this. Normally you wouldn't adjust her on the first visit, but he does. He's like, I don't know how much time I have with her. She's getting ready to have surgery, does all this, adjusts her, sends her out, tells her, hey, you're coming back tomorrow so we can still go over everything, but I've got to do something today. She comes walking in the next day, standing up. No walker, no nothing. Boom, one day. I was like, the fuck did you just do to her? Like,
No
I didn't
doubt.
have any understanding, but I'm like, you don't do that. That you perform like some miracle that you read about in the Bible.
Yeah,
like those
yeah.
things don't happen nowadays.
Yeah.
We're too removed from that. We're like, what did you just do?
Rise up and walk.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I just got to see that, and I had patients 2 times come up to me and they were like, don't know why, just feel like God's telling me I need to tell you this, that like you're going to be able to impact a lot of people's lives through this work. Like you're going to do this.
When you're
And I
like
was
19, 20 years
yeah.
old?
And I was like, okay. And I was like, hey, I received that. I don't know what that means. And I'm like, I'm sort of thinking about doing this. I don't know where that came from, but like, thank you. I appreciate and I received that. And that was why for me, like I needed something that sort of kept me on mission and on focus. So it was like finding that passion and purpose, meeting my wife around that time, all those things to like, well, then what would you do? Like her helping guide me towards that direction was all the stuff that was just like, keep moving me in this direction to then end up being really where I am today.
Were you learning a lot of entrepreneurship from your dad and your stepmom too? Because they're trying to make a business run.
Yeah, it's my mom is fortunately whatever she touches, like that woman is so smart. Like my dad was very, very lucky to have her. Like she was already a very successful running her own business, and then he pulled her into his business, and she helped that obviously take off and like build him up and be able to create what they had. I probably don't realize or understand how much I was actually getting from that, but I think there was a lot of just like baptism by fire with it. Like it was like, hey, this is what we do. This is how we do it. You're trained up on it and do it. And I was like, I got to talk to people and do stuff. Like, okay. It was
just like getting you out in the battlefield.
Yeah,
that's
just
how
like
we learn.
throw you out
taking
there.
live fire.
And then a few years into working for them, they started their own coaching program for other chiropractors. They had been a part of a bigger group. That group kind of had some falling out, and so they decided to start their own coaching program for other chiropractors.
Are we coaching techniques, or are we coaching how to grow your business?
How to grow your business.
Yeah, okay.
Sometimes techniques that, like if they're not getting results for patients, then my dad would show them like what his approach and protocol was in order of what he was doing to help get patients better. But my job was to teach the chiropractic assistants because that's what I was.
Sure.
So they're like, we're taking the docs, you're taking their staff. Go teach them what we do.
What are we doing? We're talking our CRM, how we bill, how we collect, how
we're
we
talking
follow
about
up.
how we do this, our systems, how we talk to patients, the things that we say, how we help our docs, all the like integrated systems, and just making sure that a machine, that your office as a machine flows and functions. Whatever obstacles and things that they're doing, like I'm teaching them how we do it and then helping address. And
so if this is when you're 19 or 20 years old, so that's 15 years ago. That's before this very de jour term of relational, not transactional, right?
Yes.
Patrick?
None of that stuff really exists.
But you saw that right away, right? If you have people coming up to you and they're speaking into your life, telling you, hey, they obviously felt some level of comfort or appreciation for what your parents had done for them, helping them probably solve. Not most people go to chiropractic first. Most people try a lot of other conventional, and they run out of options because if you tell someone I'm going to the chiropractor, they still raise their eyebrow a little bit.
Yep. We're working to change that. It's going to change a lot. We're working to kind of change that narrative because there's not a lot of again, it's unfortunately the way my profession works. Again, you know, in the stuff that you do, there's people that show up, promise stuff, take the cash, and leave.
100%.
They just bail, and it's like, how do I know that you're going to be here? Like, I'm sure that's a question that gets asked of like, well, how do I know? And it's like, you know, you have to overcome those objections. It's like we have to overcome that stuff too, because you know, there's people in my profession that'll be like, yeah, I can adjust you on the truck bed of a whatever. Do it.
Yeah, there's a
like,
stigma.
That's not professional. So for me, it's like, why would you want to get into something like that where it's that case? And so, you know, with the specific chiropractic centers, like I found that even halfway through school. I found my coach, Dr. Sean Dill and Dr. Lacey Book. I found them halfway through school, and I sort of had what I always describe as like my chiropractic house bill. Like I'm going to do it like my parents. I might go work for them, but like this is how you run an office.
Is the coaching thing big in chiropractic? I mean, is it so? That's pretty common that if you're in chiropractic,
I feel like in a lot of professions it is.
Found
you do
some
it,
mentoring.
You get success, and then you go out, and then it's like, well, let me get in. Like, what can I do? I've sort of built my team. Like, what do I do now? And it's like, well, let me go teach people, or let me be a part of this.
Yeah.
Like, it's also very common because there's not a lot of people who get you, who understand you. Like you, again.
You're fighting that stigma.
Well, yeah, I can feel it from you. It's like most people don't understand like what it's like running a business, doing your own thing, not being a 9 to 5. The buck stops with you. I can choose not to work, but also I know what that looks like.
Yeah.
There's
It
not
looks
a lot
like
of people that
ramen
understand
noodles
exactly.
and Pop-Tarts. Yeah.
And there's not a lot of people who understand what it is that you deal with on a daily basis
Yeah.
when you go through that. They don't get what you're.
They have no idea what Payroll Friday even means.
No.
Man.
And so it's like making sure that everybody's good and doing all these. So
How do you deal with that? And we talked a little bit about sustainable, right? Go fast alone, go far together. You can, when you're hustling and you're an entrepreneur and you're starting, you have multiple locations. You could, if you wanted, anytime pick up and think inside the box. Pick up your box, pick up this supercomputer right here, and you could probably keep yourself busy for every waking moment. I find that when I do that, what ends up happening is I can't sustain the pace. I think, I'm hustling, I'm going to get ahead, and then I end up crashing and burning. I was listening to one of your podcasts about hustle culture.
toxic hustle. Yeah, that's what I was about to say.
But you do hustle. You're an athlete.
I do. Yeah.
It's we're both wired very similar. You're very headstrong. You're very ambitious. You have aspirations. You don't make sure that every condition is absolutely perfect before you jump. You go.
Unfortunately, we just got to go.
Yeah.
I like to do that as best I can, but yeah, it doesn't exist.
What's
every
your
time.
experience been like running a business with the very real? For me, I got 9 years on you. There is just there are real challenges, depression, anxiety, things of that nature that you kind of sometimes can't get away from. What's your experience been with some of that?
So that's actually a great question. I know you mentioned my podcast, the You Crack Me Up podcast. So
Awesome podcast.
One of the first episodes, I actually talk about this story, and I've just been sharing this more recently because I think, again, you said those keywords that I feel like women lean into way more.
Yeah,
but
dudes don't
on
talk about that shit at all.
depression, stress, having struggles going through that stuff.
If you even admit that any of that affects you, that
It's
we
like
think that it's like a badge
it's a
of weakness.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
and you're
it's
like,
crazy.
I'm not allowed to show any of that,
Yeah.
which unfortunately is sometimes the example that was set before us. Again, we have a lot of men that came before us. That was
Bro,
like,
I
"You don't
tune
cry."
people out immediately when they
Yep.
tell me they don't deal with any. I'm just like, I can't relate with you. Have a great day. Jesus bless you. Bless your heart.
Yeah.
Get the fuck out of my
It's
face.
it's not possible anymore. So I've been very fortunate. Like I'm pretty good at mitigating stress because I work very hard to take care of myself. I know sort of my things that I need to do in order to take care of me to make sure that I don't run things into the ground or too low or have that happen too often. Trust me, there's been days where I'm like, I think I fucked this up. Like there's no way, like we're not going to make it. We're not going to make it till next month. And then tomorrow is one of the best days that I've ever had. Like that's the journey of entrepreneurship is yesterday was a shit show and today's amazing. And tomorrow will kind of be middle. And then the next day will go here. Like, and you just work to sort of harness that in where it's like, now we just slowly start to make these incremental things, but you have to, like, there's just been a couple things that I've done lately that I'm like, that's where the game has officially changed for me. Like, I'm super pumped to see the direction that I go in the next year, 2 years, 5 years. Because for me, so at the beginning of this year, I've had days where they were rough, where I was depressed, where I was anxious about stuff, but I wouldn't call it having anxiety, having an anxiety attack, having something that I couldn't just go for a walk, take a second, pause, and like, okay, we're good. I'm refocused and I'm good. At the beginning of this year, I legit was having anxiety attacks. I was waking up with a hot ball of acid in my stomach, can't get rid of it. And
Welcome to the game.
Yes, and it was playing on my emotions.
Fuck.
It was leaning into other emotional stuff that I just have to work on. Of like, part of my always needing to be a part of a team is my inherent fear of being alone.
Yeah.
I don't like being alone. So knowing that I need a team is this inherent thing of like, yeah, I need that. But it also comes from a place of like, but I'm terrified to be by myself.
Sure.
But also, what if I end up by myself? What if people think I'm full of shit? Like so I don't know if you know anything about Enneagram, but I'm very much into that when you learn about Enneagrams. I'm an Enneagram 3. Most entrepreneurs tend to be that. And I have this thing of like, I worry that people are not really going to love or care or value me. So I feel like I have to work harder and even to do that. So at the beginning of this year,
exhausting, or
it does.
be.
It can wear you out. And what we have to realize is we choose to, I say in order to heal it, you have to feel it, which is the shittiest part. I know people just want to walk around and we're told that we have to be happy and joyful and just abundant and awesome and in this great energy all the time, and that's just not sustainable. We have to realize that we've lived our lives conditioned and repressed on certain emotions, and unfortunately that could have been brought onto you by a shitty significant other, a sibling, a parent. Hey, you know what? If your mom was sick, then it was probably always put on you that you needed to keep your shit together because we got to worry about mom. All that did was tell you that your emotions are not important and that mom is more important than you. You are not a high of enough value because mom's here and you need to calm your shit because mom's more important. So we all have these, you know, we're conditioned and repressed, and then we have these emotions, and then we have these body pains and anxiety and all these things that we deal with, and we're like, I've had the shoulder thing for 12 years and I just don't know where it comes from. And it's like, dude, you're angry about some shit and we need to figure it out. So I've been in like a deep journey.
So like musculoskeletal can be
tied, yes.
Like, or tied to some emotional type of knots that you might be tied up in. That
yes.
Maybe even in your own mind, you don't even realize are there because you've built up this subconscious to glide you by it so you don't have to feel it.
Yeah.
Like
so when you think about when you have pain, again, doesn't mean that it won't show up in other areas, but a lot of times it's on the back. You know why? Because I can hide it back there. You're looking at my front and my face. Up here is good. Don't worry about what's back there. Don't look at that. So I can hide it. So a lot of back pain, tightness, stuff in my legs, stuff in my back, stuff in my low back, stuff in my shoulders. You tend to have these. That's not to say that everything is from that. Sure, you can go do this, get this done. Like, I know there's going to be somebody that's like, what? Because I share this stuff pretty openly on my social media. But for me, this was a journey that I had to walk on because I've more stepped now into this thing where it's like one of my now visions and things is like I have to help people with stuff like this. Like it's sort of this like you figured it out, now you got to carry this to others because people need it. So not only are you helping people who struggle with migraine and with these chronic neurological issues and the stuff that I like to focus on, but in unpacking that for people, there's a lot of emotional baggage that comes with that from sexual abuse, trauma, family abuse, just things that have created that. And now that's why they're there. So yes, there are structural things that we can still work on in order to fix, but there's a lot of emotional baggage that comes with that. So for me, 2020 was an amazing year. It was also a year of like a crazy shit show.
Yeah.
And then that year was awesome. We had like some crazy blow up on social media through TikTok. Like that literally like exploded my business. Very fortunately during COVID, because we were able to sustain and actually grow during COVID, even with all that stuff going on, which was awesome. Great. It was a massive benefit. And then in 2021, in 2020, I had a girl that started working with me, and then I lost her in 2021. And I was like, well, let me see if I can sustain this by myself. And I did. I was able to maintain the months that we were doing through basically a whole year by myself. It's a shit show to try to do it. Again, this is that whole need a team. And it's like, I have the other docs and my other team that we have, but inside of my office, it's just me. And in the fall of 2021, my sister calls me up and she tells me that my parents are getting a divorce. So my stepmom and my dad are getting a divorce. And something in me that hit this weird deep thing in me of like, if they don't love each other anymore, that fucked up this stuff inside of me of like, am I capable of being loved? Am I loving myself? Like meeting my dad when I was 8 and just all these little like childhood things for me. It's like that stuff is in there of like the things that make me who I am are also the things that probably sort of wounded and scarred me of like, dude, I gotta have this energy because me having this energy is what will attract you to me, and then I will win you over and you'll like me. And I just want you to like me and recognize me because that just feels really good for me. But also in that, there was a lot of healing that I've had to work on in, if my parents don't love them, then am I worthy of love? Like I had this weird, like immediately just like boom, fractured
like if
thing
that
in me.
Means that, then this means this. And
that was the example of love for me. Like for both sides of my parents, but it's like that.
You also
sort
modeled your career to a degree, so if they can't make it work, can I?
So
am
it just
I on the
fractured
wrong
a lot of things. It's like I have I have a foundation, and now it's fucked up, and I'm like, and immediately I was like, I don't have time to deal with this, so I'm just gonna work harder.
Ah, yes, very familiar.
Yeah, so
let's go.
I am getting ready to have my second child. I'm running a business. I'm doing shit. I met Sarah at that point. I know I've got another doc that's going to be joining me. Like, I got shit to do. I don't have time for this. Well, my body said, sir, you're not making yourself a priority, so I'm going to make this a priority.
Or you think you were just slamming cortisol levels as the end of 2021
I wasn't eating well. I wasn't taking care of myself.
Were you working out?
Like, I was, but even there's only so much of that it could do. Yeah, it's like and again, I wear like a Whoop. I track all that stuff. Like, I'm a nerd about taking care of myself, and I have all these, I've actually got a book that is an ebook that's coming out that's for my migraine audience. That's like all the tips and strategies that I have. I put them in one book because in my social media, everybody's like,
yes. Do you have a title for that thing yet?
Yeah, so it's called the Migraine Doc Method.
Love it.
It's a migraine warrior's guide to freedom. We're literally getting ready to launch it next month.
That's awesome.
But in that, I have all the things that I needed to do to get out of the place where I was. And I'm the guy that tells everyone to do that. But guess what? I was fucking lost, dude. I was spiraling out of control.
Did you ever wake up in the morning and go, kind of wouldn't have hurt my feelings if I didn't wake up this morning?
Yes. It would be easier. Like, if this just happened, my life insurance would kick in, my wife and family would be okay, and like I wouldn't have to worry about this anymore.
That takes a lot of courage to admit, man. I've been there too.
There's been plenty of times where I'm like, you know what, it might just be easier. And for anyone, again, if we're recording and listening, for anyone, it's like, it's very easy to have that conversation and to go through that process and to just, again, there's nothing wrong with you if your brain goes through that. That's how your head works. Would it just be easier if I just wasn't here?
Right.
It's just a question, and it's just a subtle little whisper that just has to come in there. And you're like, I don't know. And for me, I'd like to think very logically. And so I'm just like, well, what would that look like? And what is this? And then, of course, the other side of me is like, but then my kids grow up without, I leave my wife solo. My kids grow up without a dad. I'm not there to be able to make sure that I can make that. And I have very big visions and very big dreams and very big things that I'm trying to work towards. And all that ends. So you wouldn't have to worry about it anymore. Yep. But who's going to do that?
Yep.
Like, you feel like you're the one that's called to do this. So if you're not going to do it, then who's going to do it? Now I got to pick someone else. So it's, there was just so much stuff going on around that time. I moved my office. I wasn't even moving that far. But even that scared the shit out of me because I'm like, what if people just say, well, I'm not going anymore because you're not doing that, which is dumb. We moved like 2 blocks away from where we were. It's had zero issue. But I was having weird things. I'm like, is this new office? Is there an energy in here? I was terrified to be in that office by myself. That was my fear of being alone. Dude, I would go in there and I would break down in tears. I couldn't be in there. I would hyperventilate. I scared the shit out of my wife. My wife was like, I've never seen you like this. You're not that person. Because I'm annoyingly optimistic. She's like, we're going to lose everything. And I'm like, no, I'm going to figure out a way. I'm always that person. And now she sees me like this and she's like, are you like, what is going on here?
Sure.
So I think for her, that showed her that there was definitely something there. But this was like at the very beginning, like literally January 2021, I'm having to, like, essentially with my old office, it's like, hey, I got to make sure I have my stuff out in time. I got to make sure we have everything going with this other office. I'm doing it on my own. So what I've done is COVID sequestered me from my community. So with this whole group and team thing, you're not hanging out with your friends.
Yeah.
You're not getting together with communities.
Right.
I'm not seeing my friends that I would see at the gym. I'm not like, that's part of why I love CrossFit. Again, you can have weird opinions about it. I'm not one of those people that's like, you do it to die and that's it. I'm a social fitnesser. I like to work out with people. It's like, you went through that shit too. I went through it. Wasn't that fun? Cool. High five. We'll do it tomorrow. Like, I thrive off of that. Well, I had been sequestered from all that stuff that I needed. But in doing that, it became, this is what happens to people, I think, is it becomes normal for you to go, I don't want to become a burden to someone else. I'm not going to ask.
Right.
I don't want to bother them. They're probably going through some shit too. They're doing this. And that's the stupidest thing that you can do. Because all you should literally do is just reach out and say, hey, man, this is what I did. Hey, man, would you mind getting coffee with me? I'm kind of going through a rough time right now.
That's awesome.
And I did that with some of my closest friends, and they did. And just the ability, like, the thing that will empower you is to just talk about it.
Yep.
Don't hide it in fear. Just talk about it. So I met with my pastor from my church. I met with some of my close friends. I started talking to some of the docs that I work with. Like, I just wasn't afraid to let it out. And it felt a little bit like, the way I would describe it is like Groundhog's Day. Around that time, Encanto came out. It's all my daughter was watching. I have a weird relationship with Encanto because it's all she was watching. And she's living in her own world. And my wife is watching me literally have a meltdown and go, I need you like right here. Like, I'm like a baby at that point. I'm like, I can't, like, my world is spiraling, and I'm like, what am I gonna lose? Like, everything in me is like, I'm gonna use that, and she's all I have. So I'm just like anchored to her really hard at this point, which is hard for her because she's like trying to figure out what is going on for me.
Yeah.
And so in opening up to her and sharing, and like, you know, financially we're not in a bad spot, but it was just stressful. Like, I got to pay for this move. Like, this is what, like, end of the year, beginning of the year slows down a little bit. So it's like picking that stuff back up. So it's like, what if this just falls apart right here? What if there's just so many bad routes that you can go down.
I'm going to end up living under an overpass.
I'm going to end up, my wife's going to leave me, my
Right.
family, everyone's going to say, see, I knew that guy was full of shit.
Right.
That's that inherent fear in my head is
Right.
everyone's going to do that.
Well, because much like you've mentioned Brady a ton.
Yep.
At the beginning of this, probably before we were even rolling, you were talking about Brady's had the infamous chip on his shoulder from day one, and we all think that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
And we all think it's rad that he puts up there when he was drafted and that everyone passed on him. We're like, fuck yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Then we do that, and we run on that, use that as fuel, and it works really, really well for a while.
But you
And
can't
then-
run an engine hot all
No.
the time. We can't have the gas pressed
No, you
all the way down.
gotta have an off season
and
with a supermodel wife.
yeah, exactly. You gotta have some downtime, and it's
What did he say the
part of
other
what
day?
makes him great.
I'm 45. I got a lot of shit going
he's
when
like,
he
I
missed
got a lot
11
shit
days of
going
camp
on.
or whatever.
Yeah, it's like, guys, come on, like. And apparently he's got some stuff going on. So it's like, hey, good for you to maybe say, hey, I'm going to take some time and we're going to work on this so I can make sure I'm right and you're right before this crazy season starts.
You on your podcast have mentioned toxic masculinity a few times,
Mm-hmm.
which then a lot of people probably slot you onto a team, like we were talking about 20 minutes ago, right?
Yeah.
Oh, this guy, okay, I know what he's all about.
Yeah.
When you say that, though, I don't think you mean leader of his home, protector of his children, starter of businesses, provider for others, bringer of energy to every interchange, and in some way in doing all of that toxic. I think what you mean is I internalize everything. I am strong. No one can crack me. I have a chip on my shoulder. Fuck you and the horse you rode in on. Then it all goes in and then it all breaks down. And that's the toxicness of it. Am I understanding what you're saying?
Yeah.
And
so
what you
there's-
mean when you say that.
So when you say that, there's, again, I've been working with, which I'll dive into with the later part of the story, is like I've been working with my friend Brian Boger. You can look him up. He's amazing. Literally one of my favorite people right now. He's the one that's kind of been working with me through this stuff. So my wife wants me to just call it therapy. I think it's so much more than that. Like, he's just been helping coach me through this stuff.
Like a sports psychologist type of guy, or
sort of. Like, I
counselor?
think he just helps. Yeah, I think he just helps people work through this type of stuff, and he's very educated, and he's done it himself. That's part of. He has this energy. Like, when you meet him, you're just like, oh, you're like me. Whenever I meet my patients, and they attach to like, oh, you can help me get through this. So he's been helping me a lot with this, but one of the things that he talks about is like, we have our armor, we have triggers, the emotional things that people can say, like lazy is one of mine. You say that and I'm like, I'll show you. Like, nope, I'm not lazy. And it's like, that's an old past thing that triggers me. My armor goes up and it's like, you can't penetrate this. It's like a shell. And
Did a coach call you that when you were younger?
Yeah, I've had that. My friends called me that in high school. Like, I wasn't, it sounds arrogant to say, but like, I wasn't challenged enough in the way my education system works. So to me, they're like, he's just lazy. And I'm like, but you're not doing anything to keep my attention to. This is a waste of my time because of how you're presenting.
You might not
me.
even have known you were thinking that, but you were thinking that. And
But
that's
I was
the
thinking
way,
that. And it was, for me back then, it was like, oh, it's this. And now I look back at it and I'm like, you were in a bad system. You were playing for the Giants and you needed to be with the Rams. Like, it's just that system didn't work for you, bro. We needed to get you plugged in over here. So with what I'm
does Brian
talking about,
help you identify when this is like, is it for you like almost like when you see a hurricane or a tornado, it starts out huge, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just circling. And then it starts to spiral downward, and that's
it funnels
where
in. Yep.
Is that kind of what you're looking for?
Yeah, it's like it peels back the layer. So I met him through my coaches. He came and spoke at an event that they have. So with my coach runs this thing called the Black Diamond Club. It was for chiropractors. Now it's more for service professionals to help them in their business. So a lot of the things that have made me who I am today is my coach Sean teaching me all the stuff that he knows to get him where he's at. So I model and obviously bring a lot of that stuff with me. It's part of what's helped me successful in business, but in that, he's very good at bringing relationships. So Brian came and spoke to our group, And I just immediately connected and was like, I got to work with that dude. Like, that dude's going to be the one that's going to help me get through this stuff. Because, again, to not leave people hanging on the story, like, don't worry, I got through that stuff, but it just took, like, I would be better by the end of the day, and I would wake up immediately back in the same spot. And that hot ball, like, I would wake up, like, ramped up, cortisol through the roof. I'm really stressed. And so, you know, it was January back then in 2021. It was cold. I would literally just wake up, hoodie, everything on, and I'd be like, I'm going for a walk. And I would just go for a walk. I'd listen to this playlist called Healing Frequencies on Spotify, and I would cry, I would talk, I would process, because for me, I had let myself get stagnant in the things that I knew I needed to do. And so, you know, telling people, doing cold exposure, doing breath work, doing bioenergetics, doing all these things that I dive into in the book that I was telling you about, I stopped doing it. The guy that tells everyone the thing that they're supposed to do when they get to this place, even I was so frozen that I forgot it. And I was literally shaken to my core of, you know, when I talk about toxic masculinity, it's the videos where it's just like, no one gives a shit about your feelings. No one gives a shit about this. Just do it.
Goggins.
No one cares. Yes. And there are times where I need that. I do need a kick in the ass because I'm being lazy. And there are times where it's like, there's no amount of that would have fixed this problem.
Yeah.
It would have made it worse. It would have perpetuated me down a route where I would have spiraled out of control, went down the wrong route, probably tried to sabotage everything that I had and wrecked everything to then say, so I could have something to blame it on. Like, it would have, you probably know someone, or you felt this, or you've gone down a route where it's like, you get that, you understand it. I hope there's something that people can connect to with that aspect of things. But for me, I was like, I'm going back to the basics. You just go back to the stuff. So I was like, in the first thing in the morning, I got to get myself out. And it's like, what's the next logical step? And we're just going to take little steps. And I'm like, I'm going to work and I'm going to process this stuff. And so, you know, forgiving myself for things. Like, I would do bioenergetics work, and I would start moving my body and waking my body up, and I would scream and yell and let things out. And then my body would go, like, I listened to my body. So I'm like, what, like, give me something. And I kid you not, like, if you ever want to do, so bioenergetics is one of these things where you tap into the strength of your nervous system. You stimulate what's called your vagus nerve. Your vagus nerve is a nerve that runs, basically it's like the superhighway speed connection from your brain to the rest of your body. So it's like a branch off of your C1, goes down. It's part of your parasympathetic, sympathetic, your gas pedal, brake pedal, basically. And it goes to all your organs, your heart, your lungs.
Sohail, will you pull that up? Vagus nerve?
Yes. So this
As
is one of the
in
things that
Las
yeah.
Vegas?
No, like VAGUS. So Vegas.
US.
Vegas stands for like wonder. So it's this nerve that, as they study, it goes everywhere. So it's heart,
It's
lungs,
like the serpentine belt in your
spleen,
Yeah.
liver, sexual organs, like everything. And it controls like the up or down regulation. And what you realize is if you can tap into this, you can start to change this physiologically. So yeah, you'll see a tons of stuff where they talk about this, but vagus nerve exercises are huge.
Give me an example of a vagus nerve exercise.
So literally movement will do it. So if you start
Go for a
moving, like
walk.
if you ever notice that you're probably like, God, I just need to get up and like, I just need to like movement is going
Sure.
to start doing that. So if you're just like, if you literally just start doing this and just start like, let your body get lost in it. Just move your body. It's like you can
Okay.
do that. Cold exposure is very stimulating to the vagus nerve. Breathing
It's trending big
exercises,
time right
yes.
now, right?
If you ever watch Wolf of Wall Street, when Matthew McConaughey does this thing,
Mm-hmm.
this is called tapping. This literally, that vibration stimulates that vagus nerve.
Okay.
So again, when you're told, hey, you need to rely on me as a doctor, I'm like, no, you can rely on yourself. The things that I give out on our podcast and talk about all the time is like, you can do the work in yourself. You just have to be willing to, as you do this stuff, know that those emotions and those feelings are going to come up, and don't run from them. In order to heal it, you need to feel what that thing is, figure out where it's coming from, and we need to be able to work on being able to process what it is that's bringing that.
You don't like alone time, but you said that the beginning of this for you started with an alone time in the morning where maybe it was just
does.
you and your creator
there's
or the
this
universe.
There's this dualistic thing of like, I don't, but I need that. I needed to have some solace and like just step back and take a second. And then it's like, okay, I'm going to lean into all these things that we could be doing. So it's like, you know, any of this stuff where you're like moving your body, humming, there's tapping where you can, there's like an app called Tapping Solution where you can literally, you just tap on these certain points on your body, and it literally, it's just like when you tap a baby. It's the same thing. You're just a big ass baby too. Like you can use that stuff
right.
in order to access that vagus nerve and then pull us out of, like, if you're having a panic attack or you're going through something, you can literally do that. You can take an ice pack and put it on where that picture is on the sides of your neck. You can literally sit there and hold that ice pack on the sides of your neck, and it will help work to calm.
I've calmed people down with an ice pack on their chest too, going through a panic attack.
So you can literally do that, and it's like, hey, and all you have to do is get them to focus and hone in, like, hey, look at me, breathe with me. So if I can get you to breathe at my same rate, I'm like, feel that? We're okay. This is what I do with my kids all the time. This is why Remy does this with other kids, because she's like, hey, it's going to be okay. Because I don't try to stop crying. I'm like, it's okay. Feel whatever emotion you need to feel. Now let's figure out, do we need to feel that emotion? Like, I want her to be able to emotionally self-regulate.
So it's obvious to me that you feel like you have like a calling.
Yes. This has been like a new thing more recently. Is like,
how new is this feeling of having a calling?
It's
since this.
So I've had it before of like, hey, you've got to be able to make an impact.
And people told you this when you're 20 years old.
Because people are struggling in health. They're going to be people that think I'm full of shit, and they're going to be people that are like, I need that dude. I need to. That's the guy that's going to be able to help me figure this thing out. No one's been able to help me figure it out. Maybe it's an easier solution than I realize. So more recently, at the beginning of this year, this was where a lot of this calling came from, was like, I had to do the work, and then it worked so well. I was like, I have to share this work with other people.
So you had to go through what other people were there's no way you're in business, especially chiropractic, meeting people at the end of their rope and not hearing, I am so depressed, I don't want to wake up in the morning. And maybe you're going, okay, I can help you, but you don't really, when someone dies and you go, hey man, I know what you mean. I know how you're feeling, but they know that you're full of shit. Your mom never died, or your parents never got divorced. Your wife never left you. And then when you go through those things, you get a bigger perspective of why.
And you have to you nailed it right there. Like, you have to be careful about how you say it. So the response that I would always say is like, I have zero clue. I don't know what you're feeling. I might have some semblance. I might be able to feel it just a little bit. And I'm sorry that you're going through that. There's probably not a lot of people that know exactly what you're feeling right now. But the only thing that matters is like right here, right now, like I'm right here. So we're just here. Yeah. We can let those other things go. No one else is looking. It's just us here right now.
Sure.
Okay. So I don't understand. Like, I have a couple videos actually gone semi-viral about this, because I like to call people on their shit. Suicide awareness, the 22, for veterans and all that stuff. Real cool to post it.
Yeah.
Way fucking different when you sit with someone. I've had a friend of mine, again, we won't say, like, I've literally had to go to people's houses in the middle of I'm at my house, I'm laying on the floor, I'm watching a movie with my wife, I'm doing what I love doing. My girls are asleep, I'm hanging out with my wife, I'm doing this, and me and a friend of mine sends me a message and goes, hey, did you see our friend post this on Facebook? I'm a little worried about him. Like, we've been worried about him. Something's going on. I drop all my shit and I say, I gotta go to his house right now. Like, I gotta go. Like, I'm that person that's like, I gotta be there with you in that, because
you gotta break those church walls down, man. Get them out.
A lot of people won't. It's cool to say that shit, but it is so not comfortable to be there with someone in that moment when they're out of control and spiraling out of control, and you're like, I don't want to be around this either. But you have to be the anchor point. Like, you talk about the hurricane, they're whipping in the wind, and they're just looking for something to latch onto, and you just got to be the anchor point that's like, dude,
have you seen a lot more of this emotional, tumultuous turmoil ever since the cold became a thing in the spring of 2020, and we all had to go, 2 weeks to became 2 years, and has it become more prevalent?
It's screwed up a lot of things. Yeah. Like, I feel like a lot more people are dealing with it than they want to realize. A lot more people need community. They need connection. Like, it's one of those things that you look at of like, man, in order to survive, I need food, I need water, I need shelter, I need all these things. But I was listening to something the other day, and I don't know the logistics behind, she shared it, so I shared it. It's like, she said one of the things that determines how long you live is the amount of social connections that you have as you age. The community, the tribe that you have around you is one of the things that dictates it more than ever. Yet we live in a weird society that's like, don't be a Karen, don't be a Chad, don't be a Brad, whatever name you want to put on it. Don't be angry. Don't be depressed. Don't be anxious. Don't be upset.
Just be
be
normal.
level. Don't even be too happy or excited, dude. That's annoying. Like, can you just calm down? Not everyone has your energy, dude. Can you just chill? And
You're too intense.
We're intolerant, yes, of people the way that they're feeling.
Yeah.
And we're dismissed. So that's part of why I like working with people is you're never going to feel dismissed in my office. You'll feel the empathy. You'll feel the connection. You'll feel listened to. You'll feel heard. Like, that's where we lean into very heavily with the people I work with is like, you're just an audience that's been walking around searching for answers or somebody that needs help. And like, no one's been willing to just take the time and sit with you in the shit show. Nobody wants to do that stuff. Yes.
Not transactional.
Nobody wants to do that
Is
stuff
this
with
the
people.
future of medicine, in your opinion? And that, listen, last 2 years, whatever, last 20 more than 2 years, whatever you think about it, it's your business. I don't give a fuck. I sure as fuck know how I feel about it.
Of course.
Do you think that the future of medicine is, boy, I'm tired of being lied to. Boy, I sure think I've been lied to a lot for a long time. And boy, oh boy, do I think there are better, more natural ways, like plant medicine, like cryo, like hyperbaric, like chiropractic, like all of these non-big medicine, big pharma, conventional medicine methods. Do you think that's the future of health? Especially with this advent of biohacking, influencers, social media has really upped it. If you want to go, you could biohack your way through. Man, knees over toes guy has changed my life, man.
I love that dude.
I was going to have to get a total knee replacement. I can't believe it. I just did what he said to do. And you know why I found him? Because I was at the end of my rope and I was like, I can't do another surgery, man. I've had 14 surgeries thanks to this right here.
Yeah, right.
I can't do another one. And I'm out of shape and I'm depressed. And I'm like, oh, Joe, I'm listening to Rogan. He's like, here, check this guy out.
Yeah.
He goes, walk
it's not
backwards.
Conventional. Yeah, it's simple.
And his story's insane.
Yeah. And you look at what that dude can do. Yeah, you look at what that dude can do now. It's impressive.
Is that what you think that's our future? As people, because people can educate themselves now, man. And
that's
listen,
what I think
the guy in the lab coat who spent $200K to get his medical degree. Maybe I'll go talk to him and see what he has to say, but I'm going to go talk to my shaman too, and I'm going to go talk to this guy about microdosing. I'm going to go talk to this guy about breath work, this guy about my vagus nerve, and I'm going to figure out how to fix myself. Is that where we're headed?
I think that's hopefully where things are going. My goal is to try to drive people towards that. One of the things I always talk about with the doc in my office is like it's hard when you feel like people have lost the ability to think freely for themselves.
Maybe they never had it.
and maybe they didn't, and potentially we're just in this world where it's like they didn't they just were unaware. You're just unconsciously incompetent of the thing. You didn't know that you didn't know. What's happening is people are seeing people are living longer, but what does that quality of life look like for people who are living longer? People who are younger, who are getting more into, I can create my own stuff. I can maybe work for a company, but I can also have a side hustle. I can have a podcast. I can have whatever thing I want. And that's not to say that everyone should do that. I think there are people who are meant to be the number 2, number 4, number 32 person of a team. And that's what they want to be. And that's where they feel the best. So this isn't to attack someone for wanting to work a 9 to 5. I think that's great. But I think we have a generation that's looking at what their parents' health and their grandparents' health look like. And they're like, I don't want to end up there.
Nope. I'm not going to be immobile when I'm 75, man.
What things did they do in order to get there? And so I've got to do something to make sure that I'm not putting myself in that scenario. Now, I have a very unique approach because my profession hates medical doctors. Medical doctors have to hate chiropractors. And I'm like,
they do.
I'm like, we don't. That's
don't
not
know why.
Goal. My thing should be, it's all about you.
Where's the teamwork?
My thing is all about you.
Yeah.
It needs to be patient focused. What is it that you're looking for? Cool. I work with this, which is what we build. I build spheres of people that I work with, and it's like you basically get into my sphere of these are the programs or the things that I have or the stuff that we do with other people that are the best of what they do. So then once you get in that sphere, it's like, okay, this is what I want. This is what I need. Because there's a necessity for all these things. Every person has their place. We don't have to piss. We don't have to have a pissing contest about who gets to do what.
Let's collaborate.
Emergency stuff, triage in a hospital is important. If you don't have that, if you break your arm and show up to my office, I'm going to send you to the hospital. There's not a damn thing that I can do about it. I can scan you and look and see how your nervous system looks and see if you're stressed out. And I probably still would not adjust you right then. I would say go there and then you can come back and we will check you out again. Like, going to the appropriate person for the appropriate thing needs to be a thing. And gaslighting is a very common thing, but it's like, we need to get out of the generation of doctors that gaslights their patients and blames shit on them and tells them it's all in their head, or says, tell me what drug you want and I'll write the damn thing on the paper and you can get out of my office. I did not come to you for that reason.
Yeah.
I'm not sitting in front of you right now. I didn't wait 6 months to get this appointment for you to pass me off like this, or tell me it's in my damn head, or make me feel crazy again. People are starting to get sick of that stuff. The thing is we have to make sure, my thing is like, the messaging needs to be like, I get the total need for all this stuff, but when it's like, take this and this is the answer, and like, bye, see you later, and that's the only thing that you're ever offered, and they're not like, look into these 3 things. They're not offered that. You know, cut these. It's stuff that you can't do. That's typically what my patients are told by other things.
Right.
Stop doing this. Cut this out. Quit doing these things. I haven't added to your life. I've told you shit that you probably enjoy to stop doing it.
Right.
And you're like, but I like playing that. Well, unfortunately, you're not going to be able to do that. It's like, but I want to be able to, so what can I do?
Yeah.
I recommend that you don't. Well, then screw you. I'm going to go find the person that's going to empower me. That's part of like our culture and what we want to create in our offices. Like, we want to empower our communities. It's one of the things that we stand behind. Like, we put the health and care back into healthcare. It's that's like our main statement that we stand behind. We want to put that back into healthcare, and we want to empower our communities to make smart choices relative to their health and wellness. Well, my thing, because when I was new, was like, well, it's only this, because this is all I knew, and I just spent 4 years learning this. So this is the only thing that can help you, because this is what I do, and I do it the best, and this is the only thing I'm focused on. And then I was like, well, you should probably make sure that you're like resting, okay? So sleep has got to be a part of that. So you're like, okay, well, that's true. And then your mental health is important, so we should probably make sure that we at least like are aware and know how to speak on that intelligently. Not that I have to be an expert. And then, well, what you put inside of your body is probably important. And then moving well is probably important. And you're sitting there going,
it's the whole body.
And I'm sitting here going, okay, so there's a lot of things. And then this whole, anxiety and depression and all these, like, we live in this world where there's a lot of just weird shit about the way that people look at it. And it's that, like, there are guys that want that, like, slap me in the face, tell me what I need to do. That's the route that I'm going to go, and that's where I want to go. And if that is what truly motivates you and you are truly happy, I'm not sitting here trying to get anyone to change.
Man. Yeah.
If you are happy, right. I am happy for you.
Yeah.
But if you go home and you're like, man, pour me a fat one because I'm not feeling good.
Yeah.
Roll me
a fat one.
Yeah, get me some level of escapism. And again, if you want to do that, plant medicine, I'm about it. I actually recommend it. If you ever want to talk about it, we can discuss things privately, but there's just so many facets and factors of things that for us to sit there and be ignorant of them to discount them is a problem.
The FDA is about to approve a psilocybin study that could help people with PTSD.
Microdosing, I believe, is one of the things of the future where people will just be like, hey, man, where do you get your mushroom supplements from? Because I've got to be able to do this, because you realize it's like putting your brain on rocket fuel and you're like, I just feel better when I do this. And it's just a mushroom. You eat them. These ones are just a little bit different.
Yeah.
But I'm not sitting here saying everyone's got to be taking, a bunch of mushrooms and be tripping out.
Again, everyone's different. That's what's beautiful about life, is we're all created differently.
Everyone's
if you believe
on this
in
journey,
creation.
and if we would just have a little bit of respect for everyone's journey, like, I don't care religiously what you look at, politically, any of that stuff. I just want you to be able to experience this one. We get one shot at this.
Yeah.
I only get one run at this. That moment that literally just happened is gone. Shit. Did I waste it or did I make something of it? And also know that resting, slowing, pausing is also still productive. It is still something that feeds into things. So
it's still part of progress.
It's still part of progress.
It's not a pause button.
Make sure that no matter what, we hit the point, because you talked about like me working on this and the toxic hustle stuff, like working with my friend Brian that I was talking about 2 weeks ago, we probably had one of the biggest breakthroughs, which again, you talk about like people saying certain things. That's usually one of the things that's a sign for me. Like I am very much open to, I say things like, this is who I'm looking for, like put them in my pathway. I'm looking for someone for this. And my coach always says, what's going to happen is all of a sudden the universe is going to conspire. Boom, 2 paths are going to cross and you're going to go, we were supposed to meet, man.
When you talk to God, when you pray, is that the Lord's Prayer official, or is that sometimes just, I need help, please help me?
Like I think
please show me blind spots. Where am I at? I don't
think it has to be so constricted of like, okay, God,
Our
today.
Father.
Yeah, I don't like. I get it. Like he asks you to come to him as you are and have that conversation, just like you were going to talk to your dad or your mom or a sibling or someone that you care about. It's like you just have to sometimes be willing to express the needs. He already knows what you need. It's already aware and apparent. He already has a plan for you, a guide, gifts, things that he wants for you. It's not anything bad or good that happens. It's a lesson. We shouldn't put positive or negative connotations on it. It's a lesson, and life is always about lessons. And most things are to promote and protect you. They're not to hold you back from something. You're like, why did I never get this? And you're
Happening
like, because if you
for
got
you,
it, it would hurt you.
not to
it would
you.
destroy you. It would literally burn you to the ground. How come I didn't get millions of dollars when I was at 20? I was here and it was right there. Why didn't you give it to me? Because it would have destroyed you.
Yeah.
It would have destroyed your marriage. You wouldn't have a relationship with your kids. Like, you don't have the ability to know that route that would have taken you and what that would have looked like and how it would have wrecked you and how you'd regret it.
Have you seen that movie, Everything Everywhere All at Once? Have you seen that time travel?
I think of Click
universe?
Is when you describe what you're talking about, where he goes back and he starts to realize like he programs the remote to skip certain things, like, oh, I can pause this, I can do this, and he ends up screwing up all the time, and he's like, I don't want to do this, I just want to go back.
Yes.
Like, what got me? My kids hate me, I'm not with my
Very
wife anymore,
similar.
she's over here. It's like, it's the butterfly effect or whatever you want to talk about. It's like this happens and it makes this happen. It's
maybe
like,
we exist in a couple different or several different universes. I don't know.
I'm still trying to figure that stuff out.
I know that I'm conscious in this one.
Correct.
And this is the one where I want to make a difference.
And that's all I can control.
Are there people who have migraine headaches who don't realize that what they're having is a migraine headache? And what technically, from an expert, is a migraine headache?
Yes. So happens all the time. A lot of people don't know, should this be considered a migraine? Is it just a headache? Is it something different? Because they're neurological stuff, you got to realize your nerves, your neurons, your central nervous system, it literally is you. Like, if you've ever been to those bodies exhibit and they pull all the blood vessels out and it literally looks like a human, your nerves work the same way. The neurons, all the connections in your body, if we were able to actually pull like they've showed you the nervous system, the eyes, the brain, and all that, but if we pulled out every small neuron that was inside of there, you would still see you. So you live your life literally through your nervous system. It's why I get super passionate about this. Is like, this is one of the most important systems inside of your body that runs, controls, and regulates everything. And if we can optimize it to the max potential, it'll help you live the life that you want to be able to live. So when it comes to migraine, I see it all the time where people are like, I'm not sure, or their doctor wasn't sure, or they just couldn't tell them because of the amount of weird neurological symptoms that they get from it. So, one of the things I always try to stand on for my audience is like, migraine is not a headache. They're two separate things. Headache is typically a symptom of migraine. It's one of the things that comes along with a migraine. So a headache, some sort of head pain, tension, something that you're feeling, typically can sometimes be a headache. There are different types of headaches that you can get. Again, we sort of run the gamut and the spectrum when it comes to that stuff. It's all over the place. But typically when you're talking about a classic migraine, and there are a lot of different types, is it comes with other symptoms. It comes with nausea. It comes with sensitivity to light and sound. You can sometimes have vomiting. You can also get aura, where it affects your vision. You can also have hemiplegic migraines that mimic strokes. That's literally, you want to talk about scaring people. It's like you'll show up to the hospital, you'll get all the testing.
Your speech.
Your speech, half your body will go numb. You have all this stuff. They run all the tests on you and they're like, we can't find anything. Like, we don't know what to tell you. And you're like, I literally can barely speak. I can't even function. And you're telling me that I'm fine, I'm normal? Like, that doesn't make any damn sense to me.
Are you saying that there are hundreds of factors that can cause a migraine?
Tons of factors that can do it.
Because it's an attack on your nervous system, pretty much?
Yes, but a lot of it is really just your body's ability to be resilient and to adapt. So a lot of what we're trying to facilitate in my office is improving and strengthening your body's ability to adapt. Because how come I've had headaches? I've never experienced a migraine in my life. I never have. I put myself through enough sports injuries and all these things to potentially have that. But my wife has them. Let's say we take a set of twins. Genetically and everything that you look at, they're almost identical. And let's say one has migraine and one doesn't. Why? Well, one's nervous system and internal health is able to adapt to stresses, and one's is not. It's overworked, it's overrun, it's ramped up. There's something inherently, which again, we always have to get to the source, which I always talk about is typically neurological. It has to do with the function of your nervous system. It has to do with your brain stem, the top 2 bones in your neck, and how all that functions, which is what I focus on and work on, because I found all this stuff by accident. I just applied what we do inside of our office, and what happened was it got 2 of my first patients that had had 15 plus years of migraines better immediately when they had tried everything.
What was the series of events that led to you finding it by accident?
So within the specific chiropractic centers, we have a very, like, we're a franchise. So we're like the McDonald's of chiropractic. When you go, you're going to, the office feel will be different, but you're going to get the same experience in every single one. They're all going to use what we call functional nervous system testing, which is a test that we use. It's non-invasive, but it shows me the health and function of your nervous system. On top of that, we're going to take what we call biomechanical or motion x-ray films. We know how a finger moves. We know how a wrist moves. We know how an elbow moves. We know how a shoulder moves. The same is true with your spine. We understand the biomechanics or the way that motion is supposed to work. So if I take a picture of you just sitting here, I'm only getting one piece of a very intricate puzzle. But if I start to take you through motion and then assess what your body's doing as I take you through motion, that shows me the source, what it is causing the problem. So the scan shows me that it's a nervous system issue. The x-rays show me what's causing the problem that we see on the scan. Then through the very specific adjustments that we do to those upper cervical bones, those top 2 bones in your neck, that's what allows us to then take that pressure off the brain. And there's some big factors. The cerebrospinal fluid that sits around your brain and spinal cord isn't able to flow when there's an issue with that. The blood flow to the brain is also inhibited and doesn't flow the way that it's supposed to, which is why we get these weird eye pains and different things, because blood flow is very important. Like, the body needs that. When an area gets ischemic, we can have all different types of symptoms. And there's also just the inflammation component of that, of anything that's not good or bad, like a knee, anything that has inflammation in it is for healing, but long-term chronic inflammation leads to bad things. It's not good. So you're talking about 3 really big factors that start to inhibit and create issues that if we work to just address them at the source, it just goes away. And so for me, when I'm starting my office, I'm like, I don't know anything from anything. I know I graduated doctors in front of my name now, and you're like, you just assume I know everything about everything. Well, one person had to come in and be my first patient and go through the experience of me learning all this. Well, my profession is very bad at, we say we're everything for everyone. If you have a spine, we could work with you. And that doesn't connect to anyone. Like, I've got a spine, but what does that mean? Like, if dentists were like, if you have teeth, we can fix them. It's like, nah, dude, if your tooth is jacked up and there's a problem, we fix it. Right. Well, I need complete reconstruction. Well, I'm just the tooth spot fix guy. You need to go to the complete remodel guy.
New grill.
That's this guy.
Yeah.
And then you probably need to go to this guy because he does TMJ stuff in order to fit. Like, you need to go to the guy that specializes in that. So one of my patients called me out and he goes, can I just tell you something? Because he coached other people and he was like, he's very into marketing. He's like, you confuse the shit out of patients. I'm like, what are you talking about? And he's like, they don't know what you do. He said, if you could only pick one thing to help people with, what would it be? And I was like, it's migraine. He goes, why? And I said, because they get the best results. They literally love us in here because they've tried everything. They're tired of taking these drugs that don't make them, they numb the pain, but they just put them in bed. Like the commercials that show you, like, I do this, and then it's like, I can attack the day. That's bullshit. That doesn't happen. It's like, I do this so I can hopefully sleep and wake up and not be migraine hungover and be able to function the next day if I'm lucky, hopefully. So for me, it was like, man, this seems to work. And the story I always talk about, everyone hears this, it's in the book. I've got a video on my YouTube page. It's the story of Angie. Yeah. Angie is the one that I always talk about. She actually lives here locally in Richardson. She was a mom of like 3 kids. Basically had migraines every 3 days, and they would last for 3 days. So if you could do the math, that's
all the time.
That's pretty much all the time, and in varying levels of how intense they were. Yeah. And I, of course, was marketing myself very heavily as the Migraine Doc. So friends of ours mutually were like, "You should go see my friend. He says that he helps people with that." And she, like 6 months before, was like, "I've already tried everything. I'm not going to go see that guy. Like, what a waste of time. I've already tried everything. This is my life." And so, you know, a few months later, she ends up in my office, and I'm like going over everything with her, and I'm explaining the functional nervous system testing, and she goes, yeah, I got all that. And I'm like, bullshit. Like, nobody knows about this stuff. I'm talking about stuff that's not common knowledge. How do you know about all this? And she goes, I did all my research on you before I came in here because I didn't want to waste my time because I've already tried a lot of things. So I was like, okay, so no bullshit. Like, just go through this stuff. I don't need to hear all this stuff. Just tell me what's going on. And I was like, you got it. So I asked her, I'm like, well, what got you in here? Like, she told me, like, I was going to come. A friend of mine has been telling me for a while. Finally came in here. And she was like, well, one day I was at home and I was having a really bad migraine flare up. My husband had to go pick up the kids from school, and they came in the house. And I heard one of my kids say, oh, does mom have a headache again? Or does mom have a migraine again? And it, like, something about that moment at that time just crushed her. Like, I'm not able to be the mom that I want to be, to hang out with my friends, to go on vacations, to do all these things, because I'm sick all the time. I'm dealing with this constantly, and so it doesn't allow me to be able to have the life that I want to live, and it's affecting my kids now. And I deserve to give every single thing a shot that I can in order to do this. So she came in, go through the process, send her home, come back. We go over everything, because I'm like, let me make sure I can assess all this, make sure this is the right thing, because I don't recommend things if I don't feel like we can help you. I will send you wherever is going to get you the help that you need. Go over it. She comes in. I'm like, yeah, we're going to be able to do it. She's like, all right, let's do it. Get her first adjustment. In our office, after you get her adjusted, you go back and rest in our zero gravity chairs. One of the things that we do that's different is, like, my job isn't to adjust you every single time that you come in. My job is to adjust you only when you need it, so that you don't need me forever. I'm not a 3 times a week for the rest of your life doctor. That's not what chiropractors do. If they do, go find a new one. What I do is I'm working with your body slowly over time so that you eventually don't need me. I don't want to be a Band-Aid every time that you need that. I'm just the physical version of a Tylenol at that point. Like, I'm not doing any better. You're just trading one thing for another thing. I want to empower you to know that your body's an amazing healing organism. And if I can work with it to make sure your nervous system's functioning, that doesn't mean you won't deal with other shit. It means that your body will function way better. So, when I take people through that process, that's no bullshit. That's what we walk people through. You can ask my patients. They have visits that they come in. We high five and we celebrate the fact that they did not need to be adjusted that day, because that's how we roll. And I remember hearing that in school, and I'm like, that's not possible. My job is to freaking crack necks, bro. That's what we do. And it's like, no, that's not how we do it, which is what attracted me to this work. But for Angie, she comes in, does that, adjusts her. I'm like, hey, I will call you later to check in on you and see how you're doing. We always check in after their first call, check on her. She's like, I'm feeling great. Thank you so much. I'm super excited. I'll see you on Wednesday. I'm like, cool. She comes in on Wednesday, bring her back, scan her. I'm like, how have you been feeling? She goes, I haven't had a migraine since I came in here for my first visit. I go, cool. Awesome. Look at the scan. Scan looks good. Still holding your adjustment. You don't need to be adjusted. Cool. We're good. Comes in the next week. How are we feeling? Still migraine free. She would mess with me. She's like, I know you have a little voodoo doll in the back that you like mess around with to make it, but like, we went from like all the time to like none. She had one time about 9 months in where she had a stressful family situation that almost sent her into a flare up that fortunately she did need to be adjusted. We got her out of it. She never had any issues, but it was one of those where it was like, just immediately it changed for her. And then I love telling her story because she's very funny. She's literally one of my favorite people. Like, she has so many friends, and I know why, because she's just an awesome person, which is why I'm so glad. It's hard because I don't see her as often anymore because she's feeling better. So that's the hard part, is like, you're like family with me. I'm around you all the time, and then you're gone because you're feeling better. But about probably 3-4 months into care, she comes in, and her husband starts coming to see me too. He's a police officer. And he's like, whatever you're doing for her, if it's working for her, I want this too. Like, that's typically what happens. So I'm like, you got it. So they're both coming in. And she goes, Dr. Brown, I have a weird question for you. I'm like, dude, like, there's nothing off guard. Like, patients tell me all this stuff, say it. And she's like, will you go on vacation with us? I was like, what? Like, go on vacation with you? What are you talking about?
Swingers or something?
No. So she's like, I'm very nervous. I haven't had a migraine since we come in to see you, and I'm going on my first vacation in a long time, and I'm worried I'm going to have a migraine when I get there, and I'm going to need you. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, I understand that. I'm like, first of all, I'm married. And she's like, I know my husband's right. Like, she's joking like that, and they're laughing, but she's nervous, rightfully so. I've been free of this now, but even though she's been free of it, it's still there.
Yeah.
It still sits over her shoulder and goes, but I could be back tomorrow.
Yeah.
But I could show up tomorrow, because that's how every migraine person feels. They walk around with an invisible backpack that nobody can see. They walk around with this ball and chain that no one can see, that's like, at any moment, I could come in and fuck your day up really quick.
No doubt.
Just like that, and wreck everything. You got an important day today? Not today. Bam. Screw that stuff up. So basically it was like, listen, you're going to be fine. I just empowered her of like, have we had one since you've been in here? No. I'm like, even if we do have one, I guarantee it won't be as intense. That's not to say, again, I want things to sound realistic. I don't have every patient come in and they're immediately gone. We typically work through. It's why I recommend a course of a plan rather than just like, hey, you're coming in once and we got you better. Like if I was that good, I'd have people lining up around the corner, which we do, and we are that good, but it's not necessarily something that's like immediate. So I was just like, empower her, like, it's going to be fine. You're going to be okay. Just go on the vacation. If you need me, like, you know, empower her with some of the things. Goes on vacation, comes back. I'm like, how was it? She's like, it's amazing. Had no issues, no problems. I think within her first like little bit of care that she was doing with me, she went on like 3 vacations. They went on like one just as a couple. They went on like a big family one, and then they went on one with like their family. She was finally able to go on trips and do stuff. And trust me, she didn't make it easy. For their anniversary, they were downtown hanging out, and she sends me a picture, and her eye is split. She's bleeding down her face. Her nose is busted. She was riding a scooter, and the brakes went out. She ran into a wall. And she was in a car accident like a few months later. Like, she did a bunch of stuff to definitely make it not easy on me to help her get better, but she still did. She got better, and like now we have thousands of stories like that with people with all sorts of different things going on. But like my wife used to struggle with migraine. So for me,
is that what got you into it?
Yeah, that's kind of what started. It was her experience and me just always kind of leaning on her. And then with the patients that I had coming in, one of the things that definitely makes us different is like when you come in and sit down, like a lot of times the doctor's like back is to you, like you might not even see their face. I'm going to sit down with you within the first 15, 20 minutes, and I just want the whole story. I want your whole, tell me what got you in here, what got us here. What are you struggling with? What things have you tried? What doctors have you been to? What stuff have we been through? What things are we trying? Like, I need you to get that stuff out. It's a part of your healing journey too. And then I'm like, cool, you're in the right place. We're going to figure this thing out. You ready to get started? Cool, let's do it. So then we run them through the process. But for me, I just kept hearing very similar stories. Everybody's symptoms can be different. Everybody's story is a little bit different. But the way that they're treated in the medical system, the way that they're looked at, the way that they're treated in a work environment when they have this, it's like, man, it must be nice to get the day off because of that. It's like, it's not, dude.
Yeah.
I'd rather work a 24-hour shift than feel like this. Like, it's not, that's not why they're trying to do it. And they just want to be acknowledged for what they deal with is very real because you can't see it. You can't like look at someone. It's just like, you could see it on their face. You could tell they're tired and they don't feel good, but it's an invisible thing. You can't tangibly find it the traditional ways that they would look. You don't do an x-ray or a scan and you're like, boom, see that thing right there?
Sure.
That's it. It's a physiological way that the body works that you have to have a way to assess to go, that's why we're having that problem. That's what it is that's going on. I'm sure it's for you and your same stuff. Like, you create systems and processes that's like, well, how come the last guys that came out when they did that, they screwed? And you're like, they didn't do it right.
Right.
When you lay this thing down, this stuff always goes down first. See that?
Yeah,
They did this backwards.
Yeah.
That's why this isn't working. I'm sorry they screwed it up, but I promise you we're going to fix this and we're going to make it right. Like, cool.
The level of fulfillment in what you do for a living is helping people live such better lives. Is that what you imagined it would be? Is it better than what you imagined it would be?
It's better. It's definitely hard because, like I said, like, I treat my patients like family. I love them. They tell me about I'm like a part-time therapist. Like, they tell me everything. So I get to hear all this stuff. I know when they had an awesome time. I know when things are tough for them. So I hear it all. So I love being a part of that journey with them, and part of, you know, how I believe God made me is like, I'm meant to be that person. I'm meant to be able to help do that. That's why I always joke that I'm so big. Is like, I can help you carry that stuff. Don't worry about it. I got you.
Broad shoulders.
But what I had to learn was like, I had to also be willing to give other people that stuff too, because my inherent thing that we keep going back to is when we talk about that like toxic hustle was, you know, last week when I met with Brian, the thing that we were talking about that. I always have this resonance and this energy that I have with people. So the first time I met with him, we just wanted to talk and connect and see if there was any synergies there. And I was already thinking like, I think I'm going to work with this dude. And at the end of our call, because we were just talking, I appreciated him because I love recognition. I love words of affirmation. It's a thing for me. It feeds me. And he was like, dude, you're clearly doing the work. Because he had came and spoke, and he was like, I asked him about what got him to that. How do you speak so well? How do you speak on these things? And he's like, I honestly don't know. This is just like me. Like, yes, obviously I've worked on this, but he's like, I'm not classically trained on something to do this. And at the end, he goes, I want to say something to you. And he goes, if it lands, great. And if it sounds like whatever, like just don't even worry about it. And he said it, and I started crying almost immediately.
Really?
I couldn't even tell you right now what he said, but it just struck me to my core. And just he's very good at reading the subtext. There's subtext to everything we say. And he's good at going, I don't love myself.
Sure.
I'm struggling here. I'm very much here, but I just need a hug. Like, he's very good at the subtext of everything. And I was like, okay. And so we ended up working, we start working together, and I always joke about it because I typically will be in between, like, it's my in-between times at the office, and I'll be like, I got my call with Brian, I'll shut my office, I'm on the phone with him, then I'll come out, my eyes will be all red, and I might be a little, last time I was, like, sweaty, like, I got so, just my system, like, when you start to sweat, when you get when you get these responses, like, that's a part of going through that healing. And so when we sat down and we were talking, the time that we had talked before, like, every time for me, he peels back a layer, and I'm like, I feel pumped about where we're going, and I'm like, cool, I'm working on this thing, but what I have to realize is my thing is always like, that felt good, but the work's not done yet. There's still more layers. That layer felt good to get off, but bro, we're not there at the core yet. And so we would work on this, and it was like, okay, one of my affirmations in the beginning was, he was like, you have to just tell yourself, who are you trying to prove this? Like, you're not trying to do this for anyone, and who are you trying to do this for? Just ask yourself that question when someone triggers you. And he's like, it'll just remove it's not as fiery. You're just like, who am I trying to prove myself to right now? Quit running so hard just to try to prove, like, you don't have to do that. And I was like, cool, that was like first layer. And then it was like, oh, well, then there's more of this stuff. Well, this last time, he was like, hey, I have a little bit more time. I want to talk to you. He's like, what's been going on? And I've been working on this book thing. So I've got the book written. We finalized the cover. We've done all these things. It's a shit ton of work. And it's a short book. It's like 70 pages. But it's very condensed down of, like, the best shit that I have to give people. Well, this is on top of me taking care of patients, having kids, posting my stuff on social media, doing a podcast. Like, I'm very much that person that is harder on myself than anyone else because I'm like, I got to do more. People are like, and I have friends and people like, dude, you realize you do a lot, right? Like, you got to give yourself some credit here. And I'm like,
there's people who do more. I got to do more.
Yes. And I'm like, you know what? You're right. Because I started out wanting to be able to do this. And now that I can, I always want to soak up every opportunity possible.
Sure.
If there's a situation where I could do it, it's like, I need to squeeze every single moment out of that. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it's doing it for the right reasons. So the time before this last time, we realized that one of the patterns that I have is that I jump into action quickly just to have motion and action that screws things up, and then I have to fix that thing. Whereas if I would have just paused for a second and been like, I don't think that's a good idea,
and then you're even further behind.
Waited. Exactly. Yeah. And if I would have waited rather than forced action, I would have been in a better place. And that's not to say just to completely stop, but that's to make sure it's coming from the energy of the right place. So we talked about that on the previous call, and I was like, yeah, I do tend to see that pattern. Well, on our next call, we jump on, and he's like, I got a little bit more time. Tell me what's going on. I'm like, man, I got this book. And I'm like, but I'm getting a little impatient because we're kind of at a standstill. And I'm like, I've had to hire more people to do this than I thought. So I have someone helping me do this. We've written it out. I hired a dude to put it and make it look like a book and put a cover on it. And then we had to worry about all the design for the cover. And it's like, do we like this thing next to this thing?
Right.
Or do we want it to look like this? Should it be bigger?
Yeah.
Should we have this red thing here?
Oh, yeah.
Is red the color that we want? Like, there's so many minute details that go into what made this coffee cup the coffee cup that they chose. Which La La Land, by the way, if you haven't been there.
Oh my God,
place.
Sohail was just he was just singing
place.
Their praises.
We stole their little thing. They say we love you whenever we leave. We now say that to all
Do
of our
you?
patients whenever they leave. So that's a new
awesome.
thing that we even. It's just like, we love you, because more people need to be loved.
They got
on,
a
I
rep
think.
growing, just
So,
like you do. Wow.
More people need to have that. But that to be said, I just told him, and I always try to show up to my calls just open and ready. I'm like, dude, rip me apart. Like,
Sure.
Get me to that point where I'm like, because that's what's going to help me grow. It's why I've hired you to help me with this. And so we start talking through all that, and then he goes, you realize what you just said, right? As I'm talking through this, I'm like, I'm kind of frustrated because I'm at a standstill where the book is now ready. I've got the girl building out the website where it'll go. Then I've got what's the plan for getting it out and making sure people get it, and what happens, just all the little nuances that go there. And we're sort of in an in-between waiting for some other people to get some things done. And he goes, you realize you're talking about the pattern that we just talked about on our last call. And you just want to push through.
Right.
And it's just like my emotional trigger is that action will continue to drive me away from most of the time it comes back to guilt and shame that I have. Well, we were trying to figure out where the guilt and shame was. So he goes, let's talk about some of the areas in your life. Where do you feel like you're showing up? Scale of 1 to 10. How do you feel like you show up for your clients? And I said, it's a 10. There's no doubt. I have zero like when I show up there, I give them 100%. Cool. He goes, well, what about for this? And so we start talking about like even at church for me, like the ability sometimes to connect with my guys in my church group and even just other people is like, they don't understand me sometimes. I got a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I wall myself off because I'm like, you couldn't possibly understand me when I need to be open to that. But our triggers and things that, again, I don't like triggers when it comes to migraine. I think but when it comes to these emotional things, they trigger the armor to come up that is my guilt and shame around the fact of like, I need to keep pushing. And as soon as that guilt and shame triggers, I go back into my immediate default, which is, we got to go.
Action.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Yep. I got to go. Yep. Got to go. Like,
right.
I just have to be doing something. And so he goes, do you realize that even though we've been working on this, it's so ingrained and wired in you that he's like, do you see it? And I was like, oh my God. And I didn't.
Yeah.
I thought we were just talking about my book. And then I was like, you are so right. And this was one of those conversations where I was like, ha, sucker, I got you. You're not going to make me cry on this phone call. And it ended up being one of the most intense times that we had on the phone call because we were peeling back the layers. And he was like, well, I think it's in your community. And it took me a second because usually what happens is he helps me get it. I take it in for a second. I breathe, I process, I let all the stuff come out. And then I that's typically where the truth comes to me is how I describe it. The answer, the thing cuts through almost immediately. And the thing that I struggle with is, it's going to sound really sad. Don't feel bad for me. I don't really have like a tight, like, that's my best friend. That's the person that I go to. That's the person that I lean on. That's the guy I watch Cowboys games with. That's the guy, like, I see a lot of people in movies and in things. I compare myself to that. And I'm like, I watch people that have their tight-knit groups. Well, my working as hard as I have to get me where I am, which I love, ran me to the point where I outran all those things, and I don't have those anymore. And some of those things needed to fall off, and some of them can still be reconnected, which I'm working on, of potentially bringing some relationships back and seeing if there's anything there. But I had guilt and shame towards myself because I ran so hard that I got me here that I was hurting myself in that run, and I just kept doing it. It was like a Tasmanian devil spinning out, and it's like, why does this keep hurting? And it's like, well, it's literally your shame around guilt, and it's a guilt and shame trigger that keeps taking you back to this place that then goes, well, the only thing to fix this is more action and more running and more hustle.
All over.
And it starts all over again. Dude, I was sweaty, I was crying. Like it came to me so hard, and I was like, why does this hurt so bad? Like I don't understand what you're pushing on. It's like finding the spot that hurts.
Yeah.
And you're like, what is that?
Right,
What is your finger on? What are you pushing on? And I'm like, and I just had to like take that moment, and it was like, that's what came to me is like, I've ran myself to alone.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that I don't have a community and friends and people. I do. I have that.
Right.
But I'm the one that did this. So even though I'm at a place that I love and I'm very happy about that, and we're very excited about where we're at, I ran so hard that I got here and nobody got to run with me.
Sure.
So part of me is like, well, then are you allowing people to run with you? Are you letting people in? Are you inviting people alongside you to run with you? Or are you walling that off? Like, now this is where he's like, cool, we'll work on that. He hits me up through Voxer every once in a while. We talk to make sure like how things are going. But dude, I tell you, after that, it's the lightest I've ever felt. This right shoulder thing that I've had forever that I thought was just an old injury in football and all these things, it's been gone.
Really?
I don't feel it at all. I feel lighter. I feel like I'd been running around in a weight vest,
right?
And it was gone. Boom. Just like that from that conversation. And I was like, I felt worn out. I was exhausted.
Yeah,
like that day I went home and I was like, Mom was like, are you okay? And I was like, yeah, I'm just really tired. And so after the kids went to bed, I kind of told her about what we went through that day and what was happening. And she was like, okay. And she's just been very good. She's my cheerleader all the time. She was a cheerleader. I was a football player. We're the classic relationship that everyone talks about. But she's just like, I appreciate you sharing that with me and that you're working on that and that you're doing that. Like, and just being there for me in that moment because she knows where I was at the beginning of the year and where we're at now and where everything's going. So it's like, I want to make sure I do that work because my job is to empower other people to be able to do that same thing, and then to work with people like Brian, like we're talking about, hopefully in the future doing things together, because it's like more people need this. More people need to be empowered to have those things and to understand, but it takes somebody willing to sit down with you. And my thing is, the thing that he asks of me is to show up, to be open and to be ready to let that happen, which is hard, to be vulnerable. I'm like, it's a safe place. We're on a Zoom. It's just me and you. I'm good. This is safe. Same as you just have to find that. And if it's with me or with someone that you talk to, like just find that person, find that place where you feel safe. And whatever that thing is that you feel like you'll be judged for and that's just like terrible, let that out. And it might be a really bad thing. And I might be like, dude, and that might affect that. But that, whatever it is, it will eat you alive if we don't let it out. If you don't go to a place where you can literally just let that stuff go, it will consume you. And you'll be like, why am I in this constant loop? Like we tend to realize, like I was talking about earlier, that was one of the things a mentor of mine gave me, was like that lessons thing. Like it's not about punishments. Life is about lessons, and everything is a lesson. And we keep learning a lesson until you learn it. And then guess what? You've leveled up to level 56.
It's like
and
learning
in level
a language.
56, there's a new lesson to learn.
Right.
And you will continue to repeat it until you learn it. And then you go, I've now grown into this person. Where do I go from here? What's the next step from here? Where's the next place that we have to go from here? And you just slowly start to work. And it's what helps you continue to grow. Like my thing is like, be happy with where we're at. Dude, we evolved. You made it to the next thing. You're 34. Like chill out, dude. We've got a long race. This is a marathon. It's not a sprint. You're going to get there. Do we have to get there tomorrow? Part of me, the old part of me and the part that's still in there goes, yes.
Right.
Can we get there yesterday?
Mm-hmm.
That's the part of me that fires up. But then I go, what's the worst thing that happens if it gets pushed back by, that's what we talked about, was the book, was the example, is like, what happens if it gets pushed back by a month? What's the worst that happens with that? Nothing. He's like, exactly. You only get to do this once. You only get to push that launch. Like, this thing's live. You only get to do that once. Like, let's make sure we do it right. Let's take our time. Let's not feel like that inaction is making us stagnant and we're screwing something up. That's, again, old stuff. You're lazy. You start to realize there's all these old things that's somebody else's bullshit that they put on you. And the beautiful thing is when you start to do this stuff, and this isn't to disassociate from everything, you're just like Teflon. People's really rough, harsh comments on posts and somebody flipping you off in the car, that's their shit, dude. That's not your shit. Yeah. That has nothing to do with you. They didn't go, that guy with that stupid ass green thing on his hat, he's a dickhead. No, they're not happy. They're having a rough day. They're having a rough month. Something happened, you don't know. That's a them issue. That's not a you issue. And instead of just like sparking off on each other and it's like, oh, you ramp up like two dogs that bumped into each other by accident, you just start to go, I'm sorry. I hope everything's okay. Like I've done that to people and it just like, I've had people just come at me on social media. Like, can't believe you would say this. You're not even a real doctor. Like all this stuff. There's two of my favorite ones. One girl like tried to full blown call me out. And I kept messaging her and I was like, hey, I sent her a Zoom link. I want to talk to you face to face.
Oh, you DM'd her a Zoom link?
And she talked to me.
Wow.
And I understood where she came from and I learned something. And she was like, okay, I didn't realize where you were coming from. She thought I was trying to like, I was saying like an overarching statement, trying to do something. Like it was just miscommunicated. But I'm like, you're talking like this because it's through a keyboard. If you were looking at me in my face, you wouldn't talk like that. And I wouldn't talk to you like that either.
Yeah.
And it was great. And I had another girl that shit all over me. I went to her page, found out she has this local shop. She takes old saw blades and she like files down the edges and she paints these really cool things.
Yeah.
I bought two of them. She goes, where do you want me to ship them? I said, just give them to someone as a gift. She's like, why would you do that? I'm like, I think what you do is really awesome. I thought these were really cool. And it's just like, you can come at me with whatever you want to come at me, But fortunately now I'm getting myself to a point where I start to realize I don't have to combat, like we talked about everything earlier with the Patriot movie.
Yeah.
You come at my family or something where I need to protect you. I'm not saying I'm just going to be a complete pacifist and you can push me over. That's not what I'm saying.
Marcus Aurelius still had
you're going to get
armies,
Micah.
man.
Yeah, I'm
He
going to
still
have
had
to.
armies.
Micah, that one was for you.
You know,
Micah, who works in my office, loves to listen to Marcus Aurelius. That's one of her favorite things.
He still advanced the empire.
Correct. And so there is still that
know,
level. I'm not saying you have to be a pushover. I'm not saying you have to just be everything is it is, and they slap you in the face and you're like, thank you. Slap me on the. That's not what I'm saying.
Right.
What I'm saying is when someone comes at you with that, I just see the underlying, like, you're hurting really bad. Are you okay?
Your practice it seems like it's gonna take this this big jump where now you really, because of what you've been through, where you really are going to be able to say, you don't have to now say, I actually don't know how you feel. I can see it's hurt. You can actually say, I know, man, or
that was
sister,
part of.
brother.
I don't think you always have to go through an experience in order to be able to connect with someone, but that for me was just something that I went through to have an understanding of like what anxiety feels like, because I don't think people know until you feel it, and then I'm like, dude, that's something that it's scary because you don't feel in control.
Oh, no doubt.
It spirals you in a way that you're like, I could get out of it. And I'm like, I was that person too, dude. I was the annoyingly optimistic, will always figure out a way that I got consumed by it too. So I get that. We need to have this. I think we don't need to latch onto it as a name tag that I walk around and I'm like, hi, I'm anxiety and depression.
Right.
But I think we need to, because I didn't even get into like the place where I do call doctors out and our system out is the fact that, which we've now, there's research that backs this up when it comes to anxiety and depression. I know there are medications that help people in the short term when you're like, I was not in a good place and this helped me get me back to baseline. This helped me. I got zero issues with that. But to dismiss someone and tell them that it's a wiring problem for how they're feeling is the problem. Because I tell you that the way that you're feeling does not matter. It's just your brain. It's not even your fault. It's your brain's fault. It's the chemistry inside of there. So the fact that you feel terrible about the situation that just happened to you doesn't matter. I don't help you process those emotions. I don't even really give a shit about you.
A pill.
Just, here you go.
For the rest of your life.
Correct.
Let's shut it all down and even
and that's going to throw things off, and then you're going to gain weight or you're going to get on another medication because of this, and it just starts this landslide that you're like, how did I get here?
There are better ways. When people want to reach out to you, is the best way to reach out to you on social media?
Yeah, so you can always reach out to me through social media. Instagram is always where it goes down in the DMs, so you can always try to get to me there. Again, you'll look at some of my stuff and be like, I've got a decent following, so the amount of people that reach out, like I had to turn my DMs off on TikTok. It got absurd,
crazy,
and so I just shut them down. And it's like, listen, if you want to get to me, you can get to me over on Instagram. Is the place that you can always message me. You can go to our website too, thespecificrichardson.com, and there's a schedule request button. Even if it's just like you wanted to talk to me, you're like, I'm not really trying to set up an appointment. It just felt like I needed to talk to you. Like, you can say that inside of there, like,
very cool.
Saw you on this podcast, whatever it was, want to talk to you. Like, I always take that time. I ultimately think now the reason that I have 2 docs that came in is because I'm going to help now build them up, and they're going to free me up to start doing some of the things I was talking to you about, to be able to then say, you're going to see her for this, you're going to see me for this, and I'm going to help you work through these things.
That Instagram handle is at the
Migraine Doc. Yeah, so at the Migraine Doc on Instagram and TikTok. Pretty much anywhere you can do that. Dr. Brandon Brown on Facebook, Brandon Brown on Facebook. Like, pretty much through any of that stuff, you can find me, reach out to me, get a hold of stuff.
The pride of Richardson, Texas. Brother, I appreciate your time very much.
I appreciate you.
Thank you for bringing the energy.
Thank you very much. I didn't even know we had technically officially started, and the next thing I know, we've just been rolling, and I'm like, hopefully some of that stuff stays in and gets kicked out. Who knows?
It's all staying in, man. It's all staying in. That was awesome. I thank Brandon very much for his time. Very interesting learning his life story. He's been through quite a bit, and it's very cool to be around people who are intent on working on themselves, to be all they can be, to reach their potential. I know that's a lot of the reason why you listen and watch this podcast is because the people who we talk to, like-minded in that, they live do-it-yourself lives. They want to live the biggest, boldest version of their life possible, which takes a lot of work. Brandon really very generous with his time today, walking us through his recent struggle and his ability to figure out how to get to the bottom of it and get through it, not over it, around it, under it, but through it. Thank Brandon for his time. Thank you for watching and listening to the Jess Marshall Podcast. Love to know what you think. You can drop a comment below. You can always DM me on Instagram or TikTok at Jess from the Northwest. Please like, subscribe, and if you know somebody who you think would make a very interesting conversation on the JM, please hit me up. I'd love to connect with them. And as always, we'll talk to y'all next time.